Chapter 317. So stupid that they are cute. Chapter 317. So stupid that they are cute. That was completely unexpected. No one knew the sort of terrifying energy that was hidden in Su Zimo's bloodline. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the Void Thunder Manual, devoured a dragon, and even brought his bloodline to the blood tsunami realm. His bloodline was much stronger than the Zenith Springwater and whatnot. Everyone from True Fire Sect was dumbfounded. A person's bloodline was comparable to rare spirit liquids such as the Northern Frost Ice and Zenith Springwater. Before that doubt was resolved, everyone's eyes and minds were once again drawn in by that newly blood-quenched saber. Its massive and thick blade was grisly red and eye-piercing. Branded onto the blade like blood reservoirs, the 5 spirit patterns were malefic and were akin to 5 long blood eyes that were narrowed. Even though it was merely resting on the spot, the saber gave off a murderous aura. Sima, she rubbed his chin and murmured, "That saber was made with so many rare spirit components. Now that it's perfect with 5 spirit weapons, its might should not be inferior to Connate spirit weapons." Upon hearing that, everyone's gaze towards Blood Quencher became even more passionate and greedy. Supreme-grade spirit weapons were already enough to move the hearts of golden cores and make them flock for it. A perfect spirit weapon was something that could lead to a bloody battle. If they were not in the capital of Great Zhou, or at the foot of the Emperor, many golden cores would have already taken action and broke out in a wild war. Sensing that there was something unusual about the gazes and tension in the air, Su Zimo understood. A man's wealth was his own ruin by causing another's greed. With a flip of his palm, he put away Blood Quencher in his storage bag. "Mr. Mo, how much do you want for that blade? Name a price." At that moment, perfected being Yun Shan stood up and spoke. "That's right, Mr. Mo. It's a rare opportunity. How about selling that saber in an auction here? It'll definitely fetch a good price," another golden core added. Su Zimo shook his head. "That saber is priceless." Even though he had managed to refine that perfect spirit weapon successfully, he could not guarantee that he could replicate Blood Quencher even if he were to try again. Similar to Connate's spirit weapons, perfect spirit weapons were priceless treasures. Furthermore, Blood Quencher carried his blood. "You must be joking, Mr. Mo. Everything has a price." Perfected being Yun Shan refused to give up and continued, "Furthermore, given your cultivation realm, it's going to be difficult to wield that saber, let alone utilize it to its fullest potential. You might as well sell it, Mr. Mo." Su Zimo frowned somewhat impatiently and remarked directly, "I'm sorry, the meaning of priceless is that I'm not selling it." Perfected being Yun Shan's face darkened and he snorted. If it was before this, he would have definitely not chosen to be on bad terms with Su Zimo. However, the birth of a perfect spirit weapon was way too alluring for a golden core. If he could acquire that Blood Quencher, his combat power would be doubled at the very least. Sima Ji and perfected being Tsang Lang exchanged glances. Both could read the coldness in the other's eyes. Su Zimo returned to his seat, holding a superior-grade spirit stone in his right hand as he recovered the spirit energy within his body slowly and rested. He had already set the bait and was waiting for the fishes to take it. In the square, the 1,000-odd weapon refinement masters began their second round of weapon refinement. Su Zimo's weapon refinement earlier on had a huge impact on those weapon refinement masters. However, while the majority of them paid attention to Su Zimo's spirit gathering technique, Shui Yi of Ethereal Peak paid attention to his tempering technique. That was because he had long known that Su Zimo's spirit gathering technique was something outsiders could not mimic. After thinking through his insights, Shui felt that he had learned quite a bit, and his confidence grew tremendously as he began his second round of weapon refinement. Tao Feng, who had already refined a superior-grade spirit weapon in the first round, was now conflicted. In theory, he felt that the act of removing the weapon tripod was simply courting death. However, the truth was that Su Zimo had indeed refined a perfect spirit weapon. Tao Feng hesitated for a long time before taking a deep breath. He decided to believe in his own weapon refinement technique and began the second round. Since he had already refined a superior grade spirit weapon in the first round, it was certain that Tao Feng would already have a spot on the weapon ranking. Hence, he decided that he was going to attempt for a supreme grade spirit weapon for the next 2 rounds. Materials selection, smelting, forging, tempering, all of them were done in one go. According to his own method, Tao Feng began spirit gathering under the protection of the weapon tripod. 1 spirit pattern. 2 spirit patterns. The third spirit pattern failed. Tao Feng's expression was ugly. Su Zimo's weapon refinement had affected his mental state greatly. If he continued with his previous method, he might not even be able to refine a superior grade spirit weapon. How about giving it a try? What if removing the weapon tripod truly brought about a higher success rate for spirit gathering? Similar thoughts flashed through Tao Feng's mind repeatedly. The more he tried to control, the more he couldn't control. I don't care anymore. Time to give it a try. Since I've already refined a superior grade spirit weapon, it doesn't matter even if I fail. At that thought, Tao Feng began his third round of weapon refinement. Material selection, smelting, forging, tempering. At the 5th step, spirit gathering, Tao Feng suddenly removed his weapon tripod. His action naturally attracted countless gazes. Look, Tao Feng has removed his weapon tripod too. Finally, someone's going to try it. We'll know in a bit whether or not that method works. Taking a deep breath of air, Tao Feng tried his best to ensure that his mind was calm and he was in peak condition before slowly attempting for spirit gathering. Whoosh! A light flashed and the first spirit pattern was condensed successfully. Right after, another light flashed and the second spirit pattern was condensed successfully. After a while, another light flashed. The third spirit pattern was condensed successfully as well. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Seems like Su Zimo was right. Removing the weapon tripod truly increases the success rate of spirit gathering. Tao Feng also became excited, his eyes shining. As long as I gather another spirit pattern, I'll be in possession of a supreme grade spirit weapon. At that thought, Tao Feng began on spirit gathering once more. Right then, Sima Ji, who was at the spectator area, vaguely sensed that something was amiss and he looked towards Su Zimo instinctively. At that moment, Su Zimo was watching calmly with a faint smile on his lips. Not good. Sima Ji was stunned and was about to turn around. Boom! A deafening sound could be heard in the square. Tao Feng fell to the ground with tightly shut eyes, already fainted. His body was almost riddled with holes from the fragments of the sword as blood gushed out. There was even a crushed talisman in Tao Feng's hands. It was not hard to imagine that he would have been blasted to smithereens if not for that protection talisman. Now, even if Tao Feng could survive, it would be difficult for him to recover within a short period of time, let alone enter the ancient battlefield along with everyone on the 4 ranking lists. This meant that even though Tao Feng's name would be on the weapon ranking, his spot to enter the ancient battlefield would be emptied out. Su Zimo, you plotted against True Fire Sect. Sima Ji jolted upright and glared at Sima Ji with a deep killing intent in his eyes. He took the bait willingly. Su Zimo smiled indifferently. Disciples of True Fire Sect are truly so stupid that they are cute. Chapter 318. Unlocking 3 Meridians. Chapter 318. Unlocking 3 Meridians. Once that was over, Su Zimo no longer paid attention to the sect competition in the square. Gripping spirit stones in both hands, he calmed down and recovered spirit energy. Even though he had expended his spirit and mental energy completely to refine Blood Quencher, his cultivation realm that was stuck for a long time was also showing signs of breaking through. Currently, Su Zimo was at late-stage foundation establishment, a single step away from perfected foundation establishment. Nearing noon, the weapon refinement segment was concluded and the names on the weapon ranking were out. Shui did not manage to leave his name on the weapon ranking. However, he gained some insights from Su Zimo's weapon refinement process and had successfully refined a middle-grade spirit weapon as well. As such, he was extremely elated. In another 10 years, he would have a chance to contend for a spot on the weapon ranking as well. A mysterious light surged through the weapon ranking jade pillar in the northwestern corner, causing names to surface one after another. Suzimo's was at the top. After the competition for the weapon ranking was over, there was a short break before the competition for the talisman ranking. Lung Ro was the one ethereal peak was sending out for the talisman ranking competition. She was not weak to begin with and was already a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Furthermore, she had a strong talent in terms of talisman crafting and was the only from Ethereal Peak who had a shot at leaving a name on the talisman ranking. Indeed, after the talisman ranking segment was over, Lung Ro managed to suppress all the other cultivators, and her name was at the top of the jade pillar in the southwest corner. Right from the beginning, Lung Ro had already attracted much attention given her cold and aloof appearance that made her look like a fairy descending on the mortal realm. Now that she had obtained the first spot on the talisman ranking, she naturally drew even more admiration from everyone else. Shui smiled. Congratulations, junior sister Long. You're so amazing. You're taking a number 1 spot just like bro. Little Fatty raised his thumb and praised. Yes, Lung Ro replied with an indifferent expression, as though even obtaining number 1 on the talisman ranking did nothing to stir her heart. For some reason, Shunmingqi felt upset when she caught sight of that. Spectator area. Many golden cores congratulated and toasted Xian Yi and Lu Hui one after another. Congratulations, congratulations. Number 1 on 2 ranking lists. That's Ethereal Peak for you. Xian Yi pretended to be reserved and replied humbly, not at all. It's just luck, huh? Even though he said that, Xian Yi was long overjoyed and his face was shining brightly. Lu Hui added, we didn't bring many disciples this time round. There's not much hope left for the elixir and spirit rankings. That's not true, fellow Taoist. The fact that Ethereal Peak has obtained number 1 in 2 ranking lists is more than enough to make you guys famous through the entire Great Zhou dynasty after the sect competition. A golden core replied hurriedly. In reality, Xian Yi and Lu Hui understood that the fact that they obtained number 1 on 2 ranking lists was only part of the reason why these golden cores were coming forth to congratulate them. The main reason was due to Suzimo. Most cultivators would still want to be on good terms with a weapon refinement master who could refine perfect spirit weapons. True Fire Sect had tried to assassinate Suzimo countless times. That was a blood feud and was difficult to resolve. Perfected Being Tsang Lang and Suzimo's grudge was even deeper. Perfected Being Tsang Lang of Iridescent Cloud's Palace, Sima Ji, and everyone else from True Fire Sect were expressionless. Their eyes would flash with occasional cold glints when they looked at Suzimo, and they would exchange glances between one another, seemingly plotting something. Perfected Being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains Sect frowned in deep thought. Right then, Suzimo, who was initially resting with his eyes closed, shuddered and his aura rose sharply. The spirit energy within his body surged and spewed out. Everyone felt it and turned to their sides. It was a breakthrough. Perfected Foundation establishment. Xian Yi and Lu Hui were delighted and nodded repeatedly. Suzimo was still not opening his eyes after a while as his spirit energy surged and was almost gathering a storm. Instead of calming down, things were getting more intense. He's unlocking the spirit meridians directly. Throughout history, there had always been monstrous geniuses with exceptional talent that could make use of the momentum of breaking through to perfected foundation establishment to unlock spirit meridians. Of course, that was something extremely difficult to achieve, and only a rare few people could unlock their spirit meridians while breaking through to perfected stage. Even if they were in possession of heaven or variant spirit roots, it was still difficult to achieve unless they cultivated some unique secret skills. Perfected Being Tsang Lang's heart skipped a beat. This was an extremely rare opportunity. If he could secretly interrupt Suzimo's breakthrough process and injure his foundation severely, the latter's cultivation path in the future would be ruined. Foundation establishment, as the name suggests, was the process of building a foundation. It was the most important, and that was why there was the saying of unlocking 8 meridians. The more Meridians one unlocked, the more stable their foundation would be, and the greater their chances of breaking through to Golden Core realm or even producing Golden Core phenomenons. If there was a problem with the process of foundation establishment, that would be equivalent to crippling one's path of cultivation by half. Just as perfected being Tsang Lang was pondering over it, the Emperor suddenly waved his sleeves. Su Zimo was dragged along with his chair to the Emperor's side before being let down gently. Throughout the entire process, Su Zimo was not disturbed in the slightest bit. The Emperor's intention was clear. He was warning those with ulterior motives that they should not harbor designs on Su Zimo. Expressionlessly, the Emperor looked towards iridescent Cloud's palace. Perfected being Tsang Lang felt guilty and pulled away the moment he met gazes with the Emperor. Boom! Suddenly, a dull thud sounded from Su Zimo's body. Under the cover of his green robes, a spirit meridian shone brightly and appeared indistinctly. Within just a few dozens of seconds, he had unlocked a spirit meridian. Xianyi nodded silently. That was the benefit of cultivating ethereal peak foundation establishment. In the past, there were even people in the sect who managed to unlock 2 spirit meridians at one go when breaking through to perfected foundation establishment. A look of approval flashed across the Emperor's eyes as he nodded. A moment later, the aura in Su Zimo's body was still rising and spirit energy gushed through his spirit meridian like a tidal wave. Could he be trying to unlock the second spirit meridian? Ethereal Peak's 3 major secret skills are truly impressive. Bang, bang, bang. Explosions sounded from Su Zimo's body repeatedly. Indeed, his spirit energy surged like a tsunami in a terrifying manner and was charging towards a second spirit meridian. Each time his spirit energy coursed through, his meridians would expand. The meridians in his body were like river channels. If his initial spirit energy was compared to a stream, it was now like a massive river with a surging momentum after it was expanded. Boom! Yet another dull thud. A second meridian appeared. He did it. Xianyi clenched his fists and cheered softly. As the spirit energy in Su Zimo's body gradually calmed down, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. All of a sudden, an even more terrifying aura burst forth and a third spirit meridian appeared faintly beneath his green robes. Bang, bang, bang. The charging was still continuing. The retraction earlier on was merely to accumulate strength. Once the accumulation was done, it would burst forth for a third spirit meridian in an even more ferocious manner. This time, even Xianyi was flabbergasted. Was he trying to unlock 3 spirit meridians in one go? The Emperor's mouth opened slightly as shock flashed across his eyes. Gushi looked over as well, her beautiful eyes filled with surprise and curiosity. What spirit root did that Su Zimo possess? How could the spirit energy that he had cultivated be so pure? Chapter 319, Fiend Demon. Chapter 319, Fiend Demon. Su Zimo was still attempting to break through his third spirit meridian. On the square, the competition for the elixir ranking came right on the heels of the competition for the talisman ranking. This time, Ethereal Peak did not send any disciples, but Su Xiaoning of Azure Frost Sect was taking part. Initially, Su Xiaoning's elixir refinement skills were not enough for her to leave a name on the elixir ranking. However, ever since she obtained that mysterious elixir furnace, Su Xiaoning would become extremely focused with every elixir refinement and could reach her peak condition. During the sect competition this time, Su Xiaoning managed to refine a perfect grade elixir once again and clinched the first spot on the elixir ranking in a shocking fashion. With the end of the competition for the elixir ranking, it meant that 3 ranking lists were done. 30 cultivators who were qualified to enter the ancient battlefield were already chosen. Naturally, the most watched event of the sect competition was still the spirit ranking contest. The competition for the spirit ranking was not the most common one-on-one format. Instead, it would be held in a completely foreign environment where birds and beasts tread and dangers lurked. In that massive battle royale, 10 champions would be decided. The location for the spirit ranking competition was extremely particular as well. It was held within a dermic weapon possessed by the Emperor, the Five Elements umbrella, where a world of its own was formed within. It could accommodate hundreds of thousands of living beings and was extremely obscure. The Five Elements umbrella was divided into 5 major regions of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. There were grade 4 killing formations separating the different regions, and they could not be crossed. Out of balance, each sect could only send 5 cultivators at most to participate in the spirit ranking competition. The participating cultivators would be dragged into the 5 Elements umbrellas and fight in their respective regions until 2 people remained. After the battle royale of the 5 regions ended, the remaining 2 people of each region would get to leave their names on the Jade Pillar of the spirit ranking. Since the purpose was to enter the ancient battlefield, the 10 remaining cultivators on the spirit ranking would not continue to fight one another, and there was no distinction between the rankings. Of course, each cultivator would receive a talisman before entering the 5 Elements umbrella. If they crushed the talisman, they would be teleported out of the 5 Elements umbrella instantly, but that would also mean they are disqualified from competing for the spirit ranking. This time, there were no 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the sect competition. Each of the 5 major sects had a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. The other sects had 2 in total, and there was an itinerant cultivator as well. There were a total of 8 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. The Emperor would definitely spread the 8 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators to different regions. As for the allocation of 3 and 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators, it would be more casual relatively. What was worth mentioning was that even 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators may not survive till the end given the complex nature of the 5 Elements umbrella. There were no lack of 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators who managed to leave their names on the spirit ranking for each sect competition. All the cultivators taking part in the spirit ranking competition stepped forward. With a command from the Emperor, cultivators stepped out from the crowd one after another into the sunken area. At a glance, there were around 5,000 of them. These 5,000 cultivators were the elites of their respective sects, but only 10 of them would be selected in the end. Jun Hao of Azure Frost Sect, He Jiang of True Fire Sect, Si Yutong and Shinming Qi of Iridescent Clouds Palace, Shi Jian of Southern Mountains Sect, and Ji Chengtian and Little Fatty of Ethereal Peak were naturally among them. The Emperor waved his sleeves and a bright light flew towards the 5,000 cultivators in the square. Raining on them, it turned into jade talismans. The word life was etched on the jade talismans. The meaning was obvious. Cultivators would be able to leave the 5 Elements umbrella alive, as long as they were to crush the jade talismans. The Emperor nodded and perfected Lord Mingzhe understood before shouting, "The reason why all of you are placed in a battle royale within the 5 Elements umbrella during the spirit ranking segment for each sect competition is so that you can have a taste of what the ancient battlefield is like beforehand. I'm not going to talk about the rules, but I have some points to remind everyone about. First, don't attempt to cross the regions. There are grade 4 killing formations separating the different regions. Even golden cores who enter them are bound to die. Second, the 5 Elements umbrella is extremely dangerous. Apart from your competitors, there are many birds and beasts. While those are ordinary spirit demons, some of them have survived for tens of thousands of years and their strength is at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. The only reason why they aren't able to form a core is due to the repression from your Majesty's dermic powers." When they heard that, many cultivators' hearts skipped a beat. At the peak of Foundation establishment, spirit demons had the ability to kill them. Perfected Lord Mingzhe continued, "Although you are all in possession of the Jade Talisman, there have been incidents in previous sect competitions where cultivators were attacked and killed before they could crush their Jade Talismans." At that point, Perfected Lord Mingzhe paused for a brief moment. "Those who wish to withdraw now, there is still time. Once you enter the 5 Elements umbrella." Even though Perfected Lord Mingzhe did not continue, his meaning was clear. Right then, a cold voice rang from outside the cloud. "How can my Blood Crow Palace miss out on the spirit ranking competition?" On the square, the crowd dispersed, forming a passageway. Two cultivators walked over one after another. The person in the lead wore pitch-black long robes and his black hair was scattered casually. Sharp as an eagle, his eyes shone with a crimson red. Bloodcrow Palace. Those words seemed to have a hint of blood to it as the expressions of many golden cores present changed. A tinge of fear flashed across their eyes. The Emperor's face was impassive as he sent his spirit consciousness to scan the person before him. However, it was reflected by a similar energy. Nascent soul realm? The Emperor frowned slightly and checked with his spirit consciousness. That person should undoubtedly be a nascent soul. However, for some reason, he felt that something was amiss, as though there was something strange about that person. Turning his head, the Emperor looked towards Perfected Lord Mingze. Perfected Lord Mingze shook his head as well. Suddenly, a soft voice sounded in the Emperor's mind. That's a fiend demon. His true form is a crow on Black Crow Mountain. Gu Shi, the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House, had sent a voice transmission to the Emperor using her spirit consciousness. That was a technique that only nascent souls could use, and only those involved in the voice transmission could hear it. At the mention of Fiend Demon, the Emperor's eyes were filled with killing intent. Demons that did not have sentience were called wild beasts. Demons who had gained sentience and knew how to cultivate with strength equivalent to Chi refinement warriors were called spirit beasts. If they had strength equivalent to Foundation Establishment cultivators and golden cores, they were called spirit demons. If they had strength greater than golden cores at the nascent soul or even void reversion realm, they were called fiend demons. Once a demon forms a demonic core, they could alter their bone structures and take on human form. However, even if golden cores were to take on human form, they could not conceal the demonic chi from their bodies, and any cultivator would be able to recognize them. It was only when a demon cultivated in spirit, similar to a cultivator's nascent soul, that they could mobilize their spirit consciousness and wield dermic powers to conceal their demonic chi. Such demons would be able to take on human form and live among humans and even cultivators without being revealed at all. Unless one had unique dermic weapons or secret skills, cultivators of the same level would not be able to detect them at all. Cultivators referred to such demons as fiend demons. Chapter 320. I'll take your dog life. Chapter 320. I'll take your dog life. Once fiend demons infiltrated amongst cultivators, they would pose an immense threat. Normally, if a fiend demon were to be exposed, especially if it was in the capital of Great Zhou, the Emperor would definitely be enraged and kill it right away. However, that fiend demon came from Bloodcrow Palace. The Palace Lord of Bloodcrow Palace had a mysterious background, and it was very likely that he came from a forbidden ground of Tianhuang Mainland's north region. If it was a living being of Tianhuang's forbidden ground, the fiend demon before them must have already submitted to the Palace Lord of Bloodcrow Palace. Even though he was the Emperor of Great Zhou, it was still difficult for him to attack. The black-robed man did not cup his fists, nor did he bow. He merely said indifferently, "My name is Shueya. It shouldn't be too late for me to bring Bloodcrow Palace's eldest disciple to take part in the spirit ranking competition." Upon hearing the words Shueya, the Emperor realized that Gu Shi was not wrong. This should be the previous overlord of Black Crow Mountain, the Bloodcrow King. If you want to take part in the spirit ranking competition, you just have to take the Jade Talisman and enter the 5 Elements umbrella. The Emperor pondered for a moment before tossing out a Jade Talisman that landed in front of the black-robed man. The Bloodcrow King turned slightly, revealing the man behind him. It was an extremely handsome man whose mouth was slightly curled. He looked arrogant, and there was a faint, eerie green light that shone from his eyes. "It's you, Feng Haoyu." At that moment, an angry bellow sounded from the square. The few disciples of Ethereal Peak glared angrily. Even Long Ro's eyes flickered with a killing intent as her expression turned colder. The handsome man behind the Bloodcrow King was none other than Ethereal Peak's traitor disciple, Feng Haoyu. At the mention of Feng Haoyu, Su Zimo, who was still breaking through his 3rd spirit meridian beside the Emperor, frowned, but he did not open his eyes. Xian Yi and Lu Hui's expressions changed as they slammed the table and stood up. 3 years had passed since the battle at Dongling Valley, but they still did not know who the mysterious faction that attacked the sect was. But now that Feng Haoyu had appeared, the mysterious faction had shown its face as well. It was Blood Crow Palace. Xian Yi's face was cold as ice. Blood Crow Palace, you're responsible for ambushing and killing the disciples of Ethereal Peak at Dongling Valley? The Blood Crow King glanced at Xian Yi indifferently and snorted. So what if we did? Does Ethereal Peak still want revenge? A life for a life. You killed someone from Ethereal Peak, so you'll have to pay with your life. Lu Hui hollered angrily. The Blood Crow King shook his head. How foolish. You don't even know that Ethereal Peak's about to be doomed. Since the young master of Blood Crow Palace died in Dongling Valley, all the disciples of Ethereal Peak will have to be buried with him. How dare you? Lu Hui's expression changed starkly. Hee hee hee. The sinister laughter of the Blood Crow King sent chills down one's spine. If not for the fact that the Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace was severely injured by the dragon race 3 years ago, he would have killed Ethereal Peak long ago, let alone wait till now. However, that was naturally something the Blood Crow King wouldn't say. Xian Yi asked loudly, Feng Haoyu, how did Junior Brother Wen Xin treat you? Feng Haoyu scoffed coldly. Xian Yi continued coldly, and what did you do? Deceive your own master and ancestor. How many of your fellow sect mates did you kill for your despicable act? Feng Haoyu, I'm going to kill you as revenge for our fallen comrades in Dongling Valley. 4-Peak Master Wen Xin. Little Fatty was no longer smiling cheekily like usual as he declared angrily. That's right. Kill him as revenge for Peak Master Wen Xin. Upon hearing those words, Su Zimo's body trembled slightly. Even though his eyes were still tightly shut, there was a trace of violence in his expression. You guys? Feng Haoyu's face was filled with disdain as he laughed coldly. I'm not afraid to let you guys know that I'm at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment right now. Even if you come at me together, you're not my match. Kill me? Ha ha ha. Make sure you don't lose your own lives in the 5 Elements umbrella. Boom. Right then, there was a loud bang beside the Emperor as 3 spirit meridians shone brightly and spirit energy surged. A figure rose slowly, bearing a dark gaze. His entire body exuded a fierce and murderous aura. The unexpected appearance of Blood Crow Palace almost had everyone forgetting about Su Zimo's existence. Even though Su Zimo merely stood up in a simple manner, the cultivators felt as though a dark cloud had descended upon them. The Blood Crow King and Feng Haoyu's expressions changed when they saw Su Zimo. Well. The Blood Crow King was stunned for a moment before slowly regaining his senses. He burst into laughter. To think that you would dare show yourself still. Nobody can save you today. A resentful look flashed across Feng Haoyu's eyes. Back then, being defeated by Su Zimo was the greatest humiliation in his eyes. Expressionlessly, Su Zimo left his seat and walked down the steps to the side of Xian Yi and Lu Hui. He asked in a low voice, Peak Master Wen Xin is dead? Yes. Xian Yi and Lu Hui's eyes dimmed and they nodded. Lu Hui said, back in Dongling Valley, due to Elder Yu's self-destruction of his golden core, Senior Brother Wen Xin was already severely injured by the time he returned with Ji Chengtian and the others. That battle was way too tragic. To be fair, if not for an anomaly such as Su Zimo, everyone from Ethereal Peak would have been wiped out completely. Lu Hui's eyes turned red as she said softly, in the past 3 years, Senior Brother Wen Xin's injuries have not healed at all. Instead, they got worse and his face withered while he turned extremely skinny. We all knew that after the battle at Dongling Valley, he was living in endless pain and self-reproach. It was a life worse than death. 3 months ago, Senior Brother Wen Xin passed away and did not rest in peace. Su Zimo remained silent. Even though Peak Master Wen Xin's attitude towards him had never been good, Su Zimo could not help but feel sadness at the thought of the former's later life. Xian Yi said, Wen Xin had 2 unfulfilled wishes. One of it was for trusting the wrong person back then and luring a wolf into the sect, allowing Feng Haoyu to learn the three major skills. Yet, he could not take away Feng Haoyu's cultivation personally. As for the second wish, since you're here, I'll tell you. Xianyi sighed. You know that when Xian has always harbored prejudices towards you because of other matters. Before he died, his mind was no longer clear, but yet he was still hung up on wanting to meet you again, to speak to you and gain your forgiveness. He even said that he wanted to impart you Ethereal Peak's secret skills personally. Unfortunately, sigh. Su Zimo's heart ached. Gritting his teeth, the coldness in his eyes intensified. I'll help Peak Master when Xian fulfill his wishes. After saying that, Su Zimo took a deep breath and turned around. He glared at Feng Haoyu in the square with an icy gaze. Feng Haoyu, I didn't manage to kill you back then. I'll take your dog life today. Both in the square and at the spectator area, many cultivators were stunned. Before everyone could understand what Su Zimo meant by that, he had already turned around and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, Su Zimo of Ethereal Peak is participating in the spirit ranking competition. The Emperor frowned. Ji Yaoshua's expression changed, and she revealed worry as well. Everyone knew that Su Zimo had only just unlocked 3 spirit meridians while Feng Haoyu was at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment. The disparity in strength between the two sides was simply way too great. Furthermore, Feng Haoyu would not be the only one Su Zimo would be facing in the treacherous 5 Elements umbrella. There were others as well. Chapter 321. I Can't Rest. Chapter 321. I Can't Rest. When they heard that Su Zimo was going to participate in the spirit ranking competition, many golden cores at the spectator area felt a chill run down their spines. Perfected being Tsang Lang and the true fire sect elders were contemplating about how to deal with Su Zimo. They did not expect a great opportunity to present itself right before them. In the eyes of everyone, Su Zimo's entry into the 5 Elements umbrella as a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was merely courting death. If they could kill Su Zimo within the 5 Elements umbrella, they ensured that they would eliminate all future troubles forever. As for perfected being Yun Shan and other cultivators, killing Su Zimo meant that they would be able to get their hands on that perfect grade blood quencher. In reality, Su Zimo had always been at the center of the storm. However, this was the Great Zhou dynasty. With the might of the Emperor suppressing the entire area, no one would dare to act rashly even if they harbored evil designs. Yet, Su Zimo's decision was akin to planting himself in the midst of danger, allowing everyone a chance to steal his treasures. Perfected being Tsang Lang and Sima Ji exchanged glances and tacitly walked towards the square. Perfected being Tsang Lang said in a low voice, "See Yutong, all 5 of you, listen up. The moment you enter the 5 Elements umbrella, the first thing to do is to meet up with cultivators of true fire sect and join forces with them. No matter which region Su Zimo is assigned to, you have to try your best to kill him there. Do you understand?" "Yes." Si Yutong and the others nodded. Shinmengqi lowered her head with a conflicted expression. She did not say anything. Even though she had long severed her relationship with Su Zimo, she still could not bear to kill him personally. Perfected being Tsang Lang narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Mengqi, I don't care what sort of a relationship you had with Su Zimo in the past. However, he killed your sect mates and is bent on being enemies with your master. You should know what you need to do." "Yes," Shinmengqi lowered her head even further and responded. When perfected being Tsang Lang heard Shinmengqi's perfunctory tone, a baleful aura appeared on his face instantly. However, his tone turned calmer instead as he said indifferently, "If you can't do it, I can arrange for someone to replace you." Upon hearing this, Shinmengqi's heart skipped a beat. Even though she was only a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, she had a chance of obtaining a spot in the spirit ranking. If someone were to replace her to enter the 5 Elements umbrella, she would lose the rights to fight for a spot completely as well as a chance to enter the ancient battlefield. Hurriedly, Shinmengqi replied, "Don't worry, Master. I know what to do." "Yes." It was only then that perfected being Tsang Lang nodded in satisfaction. On the other side, He Jiang let out a chilling laugh. "Don't worry, Master. Once I meet Su Zimo, I'll definitely take his life and seek revenge for my younger brother. Perfected being Yun Shan was also talking to Shi Jian, a legacy disciple of Southern Mountain Sect. However, Shi Jian frowned slightly as if he was against it. After a moment of silence, he finally nodded. The Blood Crow King said darkly, "How you? I've got a mission for you. Please speak, sir. If you truly encounter Su Zimo in the Five Elements umbrella, capture him alive. Remember, I want him alive, not dead." Understood. Spectator area. Shinny shook his head. "Zimo, you can't go. The difference in strength between you two is great. Furthermore, Feng Haoyu has already cultivated all three of Ethereal Peak's major secret skills, and you've only cultivated Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment. There's no advantage you have against him. Furthermore, you will have too many enemies once you enter the Five Elements umbrella. Zimo, everyone is targeting you right now. Blood Quencher is a perfect grade spirit weapon, something that can cause people to lose their minds." "That's right." Lu Hui persuaded as well. "Zimo, you're still young. Don't act rashly for that moment of impulse." Su Zimo replied, "Peak Masters, please do not dissuade me. My mind is set. I'm not being impulsive. I'm just glad to have the chance to seek revenge. I can't rest as long as Feng Haoyu's alive." Xian Yi and Lu Hui exchanged glances. Both could tell of the helplessness in the other's eyes. Ji Yaoxue could feel Su Zimo's determination and knew that it would be futile even if she tried to dissuade him. Shaking her head, she looked at the Emperor in a pleading manner. Even though the Emperor could not openly be biased towards Su Zimo, he could still render some subtle help. In all honesty, the Emperor was rather curious. He wanted to make use of the spirit ranking competition to check out the extent of Su Zimo's strength. First, there was the assassination attempt from 2 golden cores of True Fire Sect. Next, there was Dai Su's death. Both incidents were extremely strange and indicated that Su Zimo's strength was far from what it seems on the surface. However, Ji Yaoxue's pleading eyes softened the Emperor's heart as he lamented internally, "Forget it." Demoness Ji remained silent the entire time as she quietly moved her seat back beside Gu Shi. Obtaining a jade talisman from the Emperor, Su Zimo came before Ji Chengtian and Little Fatty. He secretly stuffed a storage bag in both their hands and whispered, "There's an offensive and defensive supreme-grade spirit weapon within the storage bags." Upon hearing that, the eyes of both Ji Chengtian and Little Fatty lit up. He was a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator to begin with. Now that he had an additional offensive and defensive supreme-grade spirit weapon on hand, as long as he was not surrounded, no one should be a match for him one-on-one. Little Fatty blinked his beady eyes. Just as he was about to ask, Su Zimo spoke first. "Yours is a gigantic axe and shield." A broad smile filled Little Fatty's face. Those 2 weapons were clearly customized for him. With the gigantic axe and shield, his strength would also be nothing to scoff at. The Emperor's eyes flickered and a small, thick rod the size of a finger shot out from the Emperor's glabella. When the rod landed in the square, it expanded rapidly, forming an umbrella-like weapon. With a bang, 5 different colors of umbrella cloths that represented metal, wood, water, fire, and earth spread from the top of the umbrella, covering half of the skies. Dermic weapon, 5 elements, umbrella. On the square, the 5,000-odd cultivators who wanted to participate in the spirit ranking competition looked up instinctively. Everyone's gaze could not help but be drawn into the multicolored umbrella cloth as their hearts pounded. That umbrella cloth was like a world of its own. Everyone is ready. Let the spirit ranking competition officially begin. The moment the Emperor said that, the 5 elements umbrella started to spin. The first people to be drawn into the umbrella were the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the square. The respective 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators of the 5 major sects were separated into different regions. Ji Chengtian was placed in the water region. Including Feng Haoyu, there were 4 other 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators left on the square. This meant that there would be a region within the 5 Elements umbrella that would only have a single 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. That way, the pressure provided by the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator of this region would be extremely small, and basically, anyone could obtain a spot on the spirit ranking as long as they held through to the end. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. For figures rose into the air and entered 4 regions. Su Zimo kept his eye on Feng Haoyu and saw him enter the gold region. Apart from Feng Haoyu, there was another 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator in the gold region, He Jiang of True Fire Sect. As for the water region where Ji Chengtian was located, he was the only 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Everyone knew what was going on when they saw the allocation. It meant that the Emperor intended to take care of Ethereal Peak. The 5 Elements umbrella continued spinning. The cultivators in the square flew into the world within the 5 Elements umbrella. A massacre was about to begin. Chapter 322, Disregard. Chapter 322, Disregard. The remaining 5,000-odd people flew into the sky at the same time and were drawn in by the 5 Elements umbrella that was spinning beneath the heavens. At a glance, it seemed like those 5,000-odd people were being devoured by another world. Of the 100,000-odd cultivators that were spectating, more than half of them were paying attention to Su Zimo. After all, his appearance in this sect competition had caused great commotion. Furthermore, there was already a repressed killing intent that was emanating from the square before the spirit ranking competition. Many factions were already trying their best to contain themselves. The moment they entered the 5 Elements umbrella where outsiders could not interfere, massive clashes were bound to erupt. As for Su Zimo, whichever region he was sent to would definitely result in the most intense clashes. Look, junior brother Su has entered the water region. Shui, he pointed to the sky and said excitedly. Lung Ro's expression relaxed and she heaved a sigh of relief. There were no other 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the water region apart from Ji Chengtian of Ethereal Peak. It was the region with the least threat and was relatively safer. As long as Su Zimo and Ji Chengtian could meet in time and join forces, they should be able to last till the end in the water region. Perfected being Tsang Lang and the others frowned. It was clear that the Emperor's arrangements were to protect Su Zimo. The Blood Crow King scoffed coldly. Xian Yi and Lu Hui looked at the Emperor gratefully, but they could not express their feelings directly. After the 5,000-odd cultivators were sucked into the 5 Elements umbrella, the Emperor's glabella shone with a divine light and an invisible force landed on the 5 Elements umbrella. It gradually stopped spinning and the umbrella surface spread in all directions, expanding as though it was fusing into one with the heavens. Ah, look, there's senior brother He. Wow, a golden bird just flew across the sky. On the surface of the umbrella, the 5 regions shone with different lusters, forming a gigantic screen of light. Through that gigantic screen, the cultivators outside could see everything within the 5 Elements umbrella clearly, including the flora, fauna, birds, and beasts. In fact, they could even observe every single action of the cultivators within. Cultivators who were taking part in the sect competition for the first time were deeply amazed when they witnessed such a scene. Look, Su Zimo is there. Fufu, his luck is truly bad. To think that he would have landed in the forest. The landing location for everyone that entered the 5 Elements umbrella was random. Upon landing, it was very common to see fights break out immediately if they were close to other people. Of course, that was still a considerably alright situation. Landing in the forest was the most fatal. The forest could be considered as a lair for spirit demons where dangers lurked everywhere. All kinds of powerful spirit demons awaited, and one could not guarantee that they could walk out alive if they were descended upon the forest. If one was unlucky and landed right beside a powerful spirit demon, they might be crept on stealthily by the latter and die without a chance to even crush their escape jade talisman. There seems to be a spirit lion not far behind Su Zimo, and it's staring at him. If the number 1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty were to be bitten to death by a spirit demon in the 5 Elements umbrella, that's going to be the greatest joke in the entire cultivation world. Hee hee. A gentle breeze blew past, and the leaves behind Suzimo swayed lightly, producing a sound. He seemed oblivious to it. All of a sudden, a massive black shadow lunged over with an opened mouth, baring its white fangs and howling deeply as it bit towards Suzimo's neck. The ferocious face of the spirit lion seemed as though it was right in front of everyone. "Ah!" In the square, the crowd exclaimed. Many cultivators felt as though they were witnessing the grisly sight of Suzimo's neck being snapped. Even though the spirit lion was about to close in, Suzimo did not even turn back. Suddenly, he swung his arm backwards as though it was boneless like an elephant's trunk. Piak! The sound of bones cracking could be heard from the spirit beast's chin when it was struck. Right after, everyone watched as the spirit lion was sent flying back even faster than it was lunging forth. By the time it landed on the ground, its face was already smashed to bits and was unrecognizable. Twitching unconsciously on the ground, it was clear that the spirit lion was dead. As for Suzimo, he continued walking forth without even turning back, as though nothing had just happened. In the square, the crowd was dumbfounded. What sort of strength did he possess to be able to smash a spirit demon's jawline? Before that question could be answered, another bloodthirsty wolf pounced forward only to be punched by Suzimo. Its brains split, splattering juice all over as it died on the spot. Right after, everyone watched as Suzimo barged through the treacherous forest with dominance, leaving nothing but a trail of corpses and blood in his wake. A gigantic spirit crocodile that was covered in spikes had been lying in ambush for a long time and had just emerged from the waters. With a single stomp on the spirit crocodile's head, Suzimo created a massive crater the size of a footprint. The gigantic body of the spirit crocodile sank into the water again. Its corpse attracted other spirit crocodiles to feast on it, and before long, there was nothing left but a pile of bones. Suzimo had no intention of concealing his tracks in the jungle at all as he barged forth with complete disregard. Holy fuck, what's going on? Is that person a weapon refinement master? Bloody hell, he's a ferocious beast in human form. In the square, the 100,000-odd Foundation establishment cultivators were stunned. Wasn't it said that it was the most dangerous in the Forest of the Five Elements umbrella? Wasn't it said that the spirit demons in the Five Elements umbrella were extremely strong and were close to the peak of Foundation establishment realm? I suspect that the Emperor must be afraid of trouble, so he merely put together some large-sized wild beasts into the Five Elements umbrella to scare everyone. Yes, that's possible. It's not easy to capture spirit demons, but wild beasts are everywhere. Man, he's the Emperor, but this is an utter scam. In the crowd, many cultivators whispered among themselves and looked at the Emperor with strange gazes. Although they were very soft, the Emperor could naturally hear them clearly given his cultivation. Even though he was expressionless, his eyelids were twitching uncontrollably. It was true that the spirit demons in the Five Elements umbrella were mighty and not to be underestimated. However, they were the most common types of demon beasts. The strength of a demon beast was directly related to its bloodline. Simply put, the strength of an ordinary demon beast at the peak of Foundation establishment realm was way inferior compared to the strength of an ancient remnant beast at the same cultivation realm. The difference between ordinary spirit beasts and pure-blooded ferocious beasts was even greater. For Suzimo, who had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Void Thunder Manual, and even devoured half a dragon, none of those ordinary spirit demons were a match for the might of his terrifying physique. If the Emperor had caught some ancient remnant beasts, they might have been able to pose some threat to Suzimo. However, there were indeed no ancient remnant beasts within the Five Elements umbrella, and the Emperor could not be blamed for that. Every ancient remnant beast out there would typically be protected by monstrous fiend demons, and it wasn't easy to capture them. A cultivator was right in his statement. Those spirit demons in the Five Elements umbrella were not facing a human. They were facing a ferocious beast in human form. Chapter 323, Unusual. Chapter 323, unusual. In the spectator area, Demonish G was the most composed towards Su Zimo's performance. Was he already so strong in melee combat back in the Blood Fiend's grave 3 years ago? Gushi asked with a voice transmission of her spirit consciousness. No. Ji Yaoshue made use of a voice transmission technique unique to the Fiend sex and replied, "This nerd is even stronger than 3 years ago." In the spectator area, some golden cores were also discussing quietly. Himph. What's the point of having a strong physique? He won't be able to defend against the sharpness of a sword nevertheless. That's right. If he comes across cultivators, who's going to engage in melee combat with him? The Emperor sat alone in the middle and frowned as he looked at Su Zimo, who was speeding forward. The direction that lad is heading. What's he trying to do? 5 elements umbrella, water region. After dashing out of the forest, Su Zimo determined his direction and brushed his palm across his storage bag, summoning a flying sword before injecting spirit energy into it. Buzz! The sword quivered and 4 bedazzling lights shone from it. Supreme grade flying sword. Right then, a shriek was heard beside him. Su Zimo glanced at that person and was not bothered. Leaping onto his flying sword, he sped ahead on it. Sure. Sounds of sharp blades tearing through the void rang behind him. Narrowing his gaze, Su Zimo turned his head slightly and a cold light flashed past his ears, emitting a sharp killing intent. That sword was aimed at taking his life without any mercy. Su Zimo paused and turned behind. Not far behind him, the cultivator who exclaimed earlier stood with a murderous aura, his eyes shining with a deep lust and ferociousness. You want to kill me? Su Zimo's gaze turned cold. Normally, one would not kill within the 5 elements umbrella and would let their enemies escape using the Jade Talisman if they did not bear any deep grudges. After all, the Golden Cores and the Emperor of Great Zhou were watching the battle from outside. Killing enemies would sow grudges with them, and it was not a wise move. However, Su Zimo did not expect that apart from Iridescent Cloud's palace, True Fire Sect, and Fenghaoyu, there were other cultivators who wanted to kill him. Su Zimo, I'm not asking for your blood quencher either. As long as you hand over that supreme-grade flying sword in your hands, I can spare your life. That person was wearing gray robes, and because he was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment, he was naturally confident. You want the supreme-grade flying sword? Sure. Su Zimo nodded and slapped his storage bag, changing the topic. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Waving his robes, 3 sword beams shot out in 3 different directions, surrounding the gray-robed cultivator and blocking all paths of escape. Ah! The expression of the gray-robed cultivator changed as he yelped, 3 supreme-grade flying swords. Outside the 5 elements umbrella, a series of commotion broke out from the square and spectator area as well. Not to mention the Foundation establishment cultivators present. Even most of the Golden Cores who had cultivated for hundreds of years did not possess a single supreme-grade spirit weapon. However, as a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, Su Zimo had summoned 3 supreme-grade flying swords in one go. The gray-robed cultivator was calm as spirit energy surged within him rampantly. Bursting forth with his power of 4 spirit meridians, he retrieved his flying sword and used it to defend against an incoming supreme-grade flying sword. Break! Right after, the gray-robed cultivator conjured a spirit seal and released his spirit art to defend against another incoming supreme-grade flying sword. Against the 3rd supreme-grade flying sword, the gray-robed cultivator's left arm shone with a bedazzling light, revealing a steel bracer. It was a middle-grade defensive spirit weapon. Waving his arms, the gray-robed cultivator defended against the trajectories of the 3 supreme-grade flying swords. All who dared to enter the 5 elements umbrella for the spirit ranking competition were the elites of their respective sects. None of them were easy kills. The crowd could not help but gasp when they saw the gray-robed cultivator unleash 3 consecutive attacks to deflect the 3 incoming supreme-grade flying swords. In the spectator area, the golden cores of Starlight sect stroked their long beards and nodded repeatedly, remarking in calm tones, "Not bad." He did not embarrass Starlight sect. The moment they said that, the situation within the Five Elements umbrella changed. Right as the gray-robed cultivator defended against 3 supreme-grade flying swords, Su Zimo swiped his storage bag expressionlessly, and another 3 flying swords appeared before him. Buzz! The swords quivered gently, illuminating 4 spirit patterns. Another 3 supreme-grade flying swords. Upon seeing this, the crowd was in an uproar. Many golden cores were filled with envy and wished that they could rush into the Five Elements umbrella to snatch Su Zimo's storage bag so that they could check how much treasures were hidden within. In the final year of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop, after Su Zimo was able to refine supreme-grade spirit weapons, he refined one daily. In other words, there were more than 300 supreme-grade spirit weapons within his storage bag. Of the 300 items, Su Zimo had customized a set of supreme-grade flying swords for himself. The 6 flying swords that were sent out were merely a part of the set. On the battlefield, the gray-robed cultivator could not even catch his breath after defending against 3 flying swords when he was greeted with another patch of sword lights. Why are there more? Poof! Before he could finish his sentence, his chest was penetrated by a flying sword. Blood gushed out relentlessly as he fell to the ground with an indignant expression. The greed in his eyes had yet to dissipate, and he muttered while frothing with blood foam, "Supreme-grade flying sword, supreme-grade." Upon seeing that, the golden cores of Starlight sect harumphed coldly with terrible expressions. No matter what, the gray-robed cultivator was the one who attacked Su Zimo first. Even if he were to die in the Five Elements umbrella, he could not blame anyone. Waving his sleeves, Su Zimo retrieved the 6 supreme-grade flying swords and sped into the distance. He hadn't set off for long when he was blocked by another 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Without a single word, Su Zimo waved his hand and 6 supreme-grade flying swords flew out. The person on the other end had just summoned his flying sword when his vision blurred and 6 shimmering flying swords with 4 spirit patterns on them charged at him. Immensely frightened, the person dropped his flying sword and swapped out a gigantic shield. He channeled his 4 Meridian spirit energy and the shield expanded, defending in front of him. Clang! The 6 flying swords struck the shield at almost the same time and gave out a loud bang. Poof! The person spat out fresh blood and was sent flying, his face extremely pale. He crushed his jade talisman in midair. A power radiated from the jade talisman, teleporting that man out of the Five Elements umbrella. Landing in the square slowly, the cultivator's mouth was still flowing with fresh blood. A golden core of Aqua Mirror sect rushed forth and took out an elixir to stuff in that person's mouth. "Master, I've let you down." The cultivator's eyes dimmed as he slumped his head dejectedly. The golden core of Aqua Mirror sect sighed and replied exasperatedly, "It's not your fault. That Su Zimo is way too despicable. He's clearly being a bully by summoning 6 supreme-grade flying swords at one go. No one would be able to take that." Even though that person was a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and was much stronger than Su Zimo in terms of spirit energy, the difference between them was compensated by the brute force of the 6 supreme-grade flying swords. Apart from Ji Chengtian, there were no 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators within the Five Elements umbrella who could stand in Su Zimo's path. As time went by, not only did cultivators fail to kill Su Zimo, they were sent out one after another, losing their chance of vying for a spot in the spirit ranking. At the same time, some golden cores were frowning as they gradually realized that there was something unusual about the direction Su Zimo was heading in. Chapter 324, Sword Formation Master. Chapter 324, Sword Formation Master. Su Zimo has already crossed more than half of the water region. What is he trying to do? By the looks of it, he seems to be sprinting towards the boundaries of the region. The wood region was right beside the water region, and Feng Haoyu's metal region was after the wood region. Could it be? Many cultivators looked on with shock as they thought of a possibility. However, they agreed that their deduction was way too absurd. Xian Yi and Lu Hui exchanged glances. Both could tell of the seriousness in the other's eyes. They had a slight understanding towards Su Zimo's character as well. This was a man with the heart of a tiger and was decisive in his kills. If Su Zimo could say something like, "I can't rest as long as Feng Haoyu's alive," there was a possibility that he would truly cross the regions and hunt Feng Haoyu down to the death. But was that possible? The disparity in strength between the two of them aside, the Grade 4 killing formations between the regions were enough to block anyone. Grade 4 killing formations far exceeded the scope of spirit energy and contained supreme dermic powers. Even golden cores would be destroyed in body and spirit if they were to enter. 5 elements umbrella, water region. Su Zimo sped the entire way without concealing his tracks at all. At the same time, the number of cultivators he attracted were increasing. There were more than 100 by now. The 100-odd Foundation establishment cultivators were all at higher cultivation realms than Su Zimo at 4 Meridians. Even further away, other cultivators were rushing over. As everyone expected, he had turned into the greatest target the moment he entered the 5 elements umbrella. The intersection of the wood and water region was not far away. A gigantic light screen stood erected between heaven and earth, extending boundlessly into the distance. There were waves of light shimmering on the screen in a mysterious and beautiful manner. It exuded a frightening aura, as though it was warning the cultivators within the 5 elements umbrella to stay away from it. Su Zimo slowed down and gradually stopped. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 Foundation establishment cultivators surrounded him from all directions. Unfriendly and murderous, they sealed all of Su Zimo's escape paths. There were even more cultivators waiting outside the encirclement, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Su Zimo was expressionless as he swept his gaze across the crowd. He paused for a brief moment when he caught sight of a familiar figure in the crowd. Shin Mingqi was among the 100-odd cultivators that were surrounding him. She looked at Su Zimo with a complicated expression and sighed gently. Su Zimo, even a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, is doomed if he were to get encircled by more than 104 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. You won't be able to escape. Su Zimo scoffed coldly with an indifferent expression without even looking at her. For certain people, I only have a word of advice. Don't seek trouble for yourself and scram as far as possible. Zung, zung, zung. Waving his robes, a sword glow flew out of his storage bag and hovered before him. Everyone focused their gazes and shuddered. 18 flying swords. The 18 flying swords were neatly arranged, shining with resplendence and sharpness. They were all supreme-grade flying swords. Kill him, and those supreme-grade flying swords would be ours. A Foundation establishment cultivator was so jealous that he was almost losing his mind. Everyone, let's strike together so that he doesn't have a chance to crush the Jade Talisman. Right then, a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator of True Fire sect shouted and summoned his flying sword. It shone brightly and had a frosty cold aura. The 100-odd Foundation establishment cultivators that were in the encirclement were already lusting with greed to begin with. When they heard that shout, they struck immediately without hesitation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, countless spirit lights shone and many flying swords interweaved in the air, forming a huge net that engulfed Su Zimo. Outside the 5 elements umbrella, many golden cores were stunned when they saw that Su Zimo had summoned as many as 18 supreme-grade flying swords. The Emperor narrowed his eyes and exclaimed softly. He noticed that the 18 flying swords were identical in terms of length, width, and etched patterns. Could it be? The Emperor's gaze landed on Xian Yi. Xian Yi of Ethereal Peak was one of the rare few sword formation masters out there, and Ethereal Peak's hexagonal sword formation was also renowned through the Great Zhou dynasty. Before the Emperor could finish his thought, he heard a cry from the crowd. Goodness, what is that? That seems to be a formation. Sword formation master. Suzimo is a sword formation master. Within the water region, Suzimo controlled 18 supreme-grade flying swords, dividing them into 3 groups of 6 flying swords each. Each flying sword shuttled through the air, leaving behind streams of sword chi. In the blink of an eye, the 6 flying swords formed a star-shaped sword formation that shone with a bedazzling light. Hexagonal sword formation. 3 hexagonal sword formations spun around Suzimo like gigantic spinning wheels. They circled and blocked off all the incoming flying swords. Everyone, don't give up. Suzimo's spirit energy expenditure must have reached the limit for controlling 18 flying swords. If we continue persisting, he'll definitely have no strength left to retaliate and will die. The moment that Foundation Establishment Cultivator of True Fire Sect spoke, Suzimo's voice sounded indifferently. Instant thunder. Suzimo conjured a spirit seal and pointed towards the sky with one finger while controlling his flying swords. Snap! A giant thunderbolt struck the crowd, bursting forth with a dazzling ball of lightning. More than 10 Foundation Establishment cultivators were caught off guard. They were struck by the thunderbolt and fell to the ground, shrieking continuously. Even though that cultivator of True Fire Sect had crushed a protection talisman preemptively and defended against the thunderbolt, he looked clearly wretched and was filled with lingering fear. He was right. Suzimo indeed did not have much spirit energy left to release spirit arts. However, Suzimo's power of thunder originated from his bloodline. The energy contained within was even more terrifying than his 3 Meridian spirit energy. Go! Suzimo waved his hand and a hexagonal sword formation sped off, deflecting a series of incoming flying swords and piercing into the crowd. Poof! 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 Blood spurted out, and the air was filled with the stench of blood. Some cultivators were already injured after barely withstanding the might of thunder. How could they have enough energy left to resist the hexagonal sword formation made up of supreme-grade flying swords? It crushed everything in its path. Some of the more alert cultivators crushed their jade talismans preemptively and left the 5 elements umbrella. Even though they were indignant, their lives were spared. As for some of the cultivators who were greedier and still harbored designs on Suzimo's supreme-grade spirit weapons, most of them died under the hexagonal sword formation. There was also a portion of powerful cultivators who managed to defend against the might of the hexagonal sword formation. However, they were left severely injured and completely lost their chance for a spot in the spirit ranking. In the blink of an eye, more than 104 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators were destroyed by Suzimo and were in a complete mess. In the square, the 100,000-odd Foundation Establishment cultivators gasped with agape mouths. The scene before them had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. No one would have expected that a 3 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator would be invincible within the 5 elements umbrella and even cause such a bloody storm. One of the cultivators lamented, "I've heard that sword formation masters are almost invincible amongst cultivators of the same realm." Seems like those words were not exaggerated at all. 18 supreme-grade flying swords and a Grade 2 formation. Suzimo's combat strength was not weaker than 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators. Chapter 325, Crossing Regions. Chapter 325, Crossing Regions. Go! Suddenly, a figure dashed over at lightning speed, radiating a powerful aura. Beneath his clothes, 5 spirit meridians shimmered and spirit energy gushed. It was the only 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator in the water region, Ji Chengtian of Ethereal Peak. Sure. Before Ji Chengtian had even arrived, a sword beam shot out through a tremble of his sleeves. The strange thing was that just as the sword beam flashed, it disappeared without a trace along with the flying sword. It was as though the sword beam was just an illusion. Everyone, watch out. That's one of Ethereal Peak's secret skills. One of the Foundation Establishment cultivators exclaimed in shock. The moment he finished speaking, a sharp blade penetrated his shoulder, blood and fresh blood gushed out as he fell. Even till the end, that person had not managed to discover any traces of the flying sword. There were 3 levels to ethereal sword. First was shadows and second was void. The fact that Ji Qingtian had summoned his flying sword, and yet it was hidden and almost undetectable, meant that he had already cultivated to the void realm. But of course, the so-called void was not without a trace. It was merely extremely difficult to detect. With Ji Qingtian's spirit energy as a 5 meridian coupled with the secret skill of ethereal peak, ripples appeared in the void wherever his flying sword passed. It appeared unpredictably, followed by flashes of blood and repeated shrieks. Initially, the 100-odd Foundation establishment cultivators who were surrounding Su Zimo were already massively defeated by his hexagonal sword formation. Now that they were being harvested by Ji Qingtian's flying sword, they were instantly annihilated. While more cultivators were gathering in the surroundings, none of them dared to act rashly. Ji Qingtian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Su Zimo was fine. Thankfully, I wasn't too late. Thank you, senior brother Ji. Su Zimo nodded and expressed his thanks. Scanning his surroundings, Ji Qingtian said in a low voice, there are still hundreds of Foundation establishment cultivators left in the water region. If we were to get trapped, it'll be easy for us to get hurt as well. Junior brother Su, follow me closely. We'll leave this place first. Su Zimo shook his head. Senior brother Ji, hurry and leave first. You don't have to bother about me. Junior brother Su, what do you mean by that? Ji Qingtian frowned and was perplexed. Pausing for a moment, he came to a realization. Don't worry, junior brother Su. I'll guarantee your safety with me around. Su Zimo turned to look at the gigantic light screen not far away and kept silent. Junior brother Su, you? Ji Qingtian's lips slowly opened as though he had thought of something. Nodding with a smile, Su Zimo retracted his 18 supreme-grade flying swords and walked towards the gigantic light screen. His footsteps were firm without any hesitation. Before participating in the spirit ranking competition, Su Zimo had already understood that his only chance of killing Feng Haoyu was within the 5 elements umbrella. After the end of the sect competition, the Blood Crow King would accompany Feng Haoyu, and they were in the capital to boot. Su Zimo would have no chance of striking. If they were to enter the ancient battlefield, no one could predict what would happen in that completely unfamiliar environment. Therefore, Su Zimo had already made a decision the moment he entered the water region. He would kill Feng Haoyu even if it meant that he had to cross 2 grade 4 killing formations. Ah! At the spectator area, Ji Yaoxue jolted up and exclaimed in shock as her expression changed. Seems like Su Zimo is really going to cross the regions. Fufu, he's honestly too naive and doesn't listen to advice. He can't blame anyone for having a death wish. Ji Yaoxue turned around hurriedly, hoping that the Emperor could teleport Su Zimo out. Noticing Ji Yaoxue's actions, perfected being Lang said all of a sudden, Third Princess, the spirit ranking competition has already begun and outsiders can't interfere casually. Otherwise, what integrity is there to speak of for the sect competition? That's right, the elders of True Fire sect chimed in hurriedly. Back when the Emperor allocated Su Zimo into the water region, perfected being Lang and the others were already dissatisfied. However, they could not express their displeasure clearly. Now that perfected being Lang made that statement in front of everyone, it would be hard for the Emperor to save Su Zimo even if he wanted to. What should we do, senior brother? Think of something. Lu Hui looked anxious. Pondering for a moment, Xianyi suddenly said, Junior sister, do you remember that year's 5 peaks face-off where Zimo attained number 1 of 4 peaks? Array Peak was one of them. So what? Lu Hui frowned. If you tell me that Zimo is talented in array formations and is already able to set up and dispel grade 3 formations, I can believe that. However, grade 4 formations can only be set up by nascent souls, and they delve into the profoundness of dermic powers. Even you can't deal with them, let alone Zimo. The 5 elements umbrella is the Emperor's dermic weapon, and those are grade 4 killing formations inside. Zimo's practically headed for death. Lu Hui sighed deeply again. There's something that none of you know. Xianyi replied, Back when Zemo crossed the Tin Formation's pagoda, he dispelled the killing formations at the fastest possible speed. What do you mean? Lu Hui was taken aback. Xianyi lamented. It's hard to say if it's other types of array formations. However, Zemo might have some unique method of dispelling killing formations. Look, he's already inside. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. In the water region, Su Zemo had already entered the gigantic light screen into a grade 4 killing formation. Ji Yaoxue and the others watched the 5 elements umbrella nervously with fixed gazes and bated breaths. The moment Su Zemo crossed the light screen, the scenery before him changed. Suddenly, he was located in a huge valley with thick, steep walls on both sides. Before he could think about it, there was a loud boom in front of him and the mountains shook. A huge torrent rushed over from the front and gushed into the valley, rumbling in a furious manner. Su Zemo summoned his flying sword and soared into the skies hurriedly. While it seemed like a simple torrent, Su Zemo's spirit perception alerted him that the torrent was extremely dangerous. Even a single splash could not be underestimated. The moment Su Zemo rose into the air, everything above him was pitch black as though his vision was blocked. Raising his head, he saw that the valley was shaken. Rocks slid down and the flowers and trees on both sides of the valley were falling along in the mudslide. This killing formation was situated between the water and wood regions. Every single drop of water and piece of wood within the formation was condensed with supreme dermic powers. Even a single drop of water or leaf was more than enough to destroy a foundation establishment cultivator. Endless pieces of wood fell from above, covering the skies while a torrential current surged beneath him. Su Zemo was in a hopeless situation. Right then, Su Zemo closed his eyes. By now, his 5 senses were useless. The only way for him to get out of the valley alive was to use his spirit perception. Killing formations were immensely powerful. However, in a similar fashion, the flaws within killing formations were the most obvious out of the few types of formations. Su Zemo rode on his flying sword, maneuvering within an extremely narrow space. Occasionally, he would accelerate to dodge an incoming wave. Sometimes, he would pause suddenly and manage to dodge falling branches before him. Between the water and wood formed by the supreme dermic powers and everyone's shocked gazes, Su Zemo advanced through the narrow gap carefully and closed in towards the wood region. Chapter 326, Honest Man. Chapter 326, Honest Man. The torrent and fallen trees formed from the supreme dermic powers shook the entire world, exuding an imposing aura. Even the audiences were able to feel that power of annihilation as though they were experiencing it personally. In the square, some of the cultivators were so scared that their faces were pale despite merely watching. That was the power of grade 4 killing formations. That was the power that belonged to the Dharma. Be it spirit energy, art, or weapons, none of them could be stronger than dermic powers, arts, and weapons. One can only understand the secrets of the Dharma after entering nascent soul state and cultivating an essence spirit. Even golden cores can't comprehend them. Between the endless falling trees and torrential waves, the figure that was moving forward was so tiny. In fact, it looked a little humble, as though it could be crushed into nothingness at any moment. However, for some reason, everyone was feeling a deep sense of shock that was even more intense than the impact of a grade 4 killing formation. What sort of a willpower did that man possess? Despite the arduous dangers that were laden with killing intent, no one could stop his intentions. If he wanted to kill someone today, they would not get to live till the next day. Peak Master Wen Xian's wish was finally going to be fulfilled by someone. In the battle at Dongling Valley, many ethereal peak disciples perished. Someone was going to have to pay for that debt. I can't rest as long as Feng Haoyu's alive. Dayu was not wrong. There was indeed a ferocious tiger hidden within Su Zemo's heart that was sleeping. Back when Dayu brought Su Zemo onto the path of cultivation, that ferocious tiger had already awoken. Naturally, people were meant to be eaten when a ferocious tiger was awake. Both in the square and at the spectator area, more than 100,000 pairs of eyes watched that figure cross the treacheries of a grade 4 killing formation. It was extremely silent and no one spoke. How did he do it? Even as a nascent soul, the Emperor could not understand what was going on. Hee, that nerd's full of surprises. He's truly getting more interesting by the day. Ji Yaoshue pursed her lips together and smiled, her bright eyes curving into crescent moons. She gave a half-smile and rolled her eyes at Demoness Ji. Her gaze shimmered. Look, he's about to cross it. Finally, under everyone's gaze, Su Zimo crossed to the wood region from the water region. Everyone from Ethereal Peak heaved a sigh of relief and looked invigorated. Discussions rose from the crowd again. By the looks of it, perhaps only 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators are able to stop Su Zimo now. There are 2 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the wood region, Shi Jian of Southern Mountains Sect, and an itinerant cultivator. Su Zimo must be absolutely tuckered out after crossing a grade 4 killing formation. He will most likely die if he were to encounter a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. At the spectator area, perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains Sect gloated and lamented. Seems like Su Zimo's storage bag is about to land in the hands of Southern Mountains Sect. Crossing the grade 4 killing formation, Su Zimo arrived at the wood region. Even though he survived the dangerous journey, Su Zimo's mental and spirit energy were extremely taxed and his green robe was drenched in sweat. That was a grade 4 killing formation. If it was a grade 5 killing formation, Su Zimo reckoned that even with his keen spirit perception, his body would not be able to react in time and he would die within. It was way too dangerous. Behind him was the grade 4 killing formation, and there were no other cultivators nearby. Retrieving 2 superior-grade spirit stones from his storage bag, Su Zimo sped forward while recovering spirit energy. He had to recover his spirit energy completely before arriving at the next grade 4 killing formation. As such, Su Zimo chose to conserve spirit energy by sprinting on the ground instead of riding his flying sword. However, his speed was not compromised. Along the way, he encountered many signs of fighting. There were even some corpses on the ground with warmth. The cultivators had died without being able to crush their jade talismans in time. After a while, an exclamation was heard. A figure flashed forward and blocked Su Zimo's path. Raising his head, Su Zimo saw that it was the legacy disciple of Southern Mountains Sect, Shi Jian. He was one of the hot favorites for the spirit ranking competition, and it was said that he was also at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment. Greetings, Mr. Imo. I am Shi Jian. To Su Zimo's surprise, Shi Jian was unlike other cultivators and did not attack him right away. Instead, the latter cupped his fists and greeted. When he saw that this person looked simple and honest, Su Zimo had a better impression of him and nodded in response. Are you also located in the wood region, Mr. Imo? I'm seeing you for the first time. There was no way Shi Jian would know that Su Zimo had crossed over from the water region. Su Zimo did not explain and merely smiled. Shi Jian looked uneasy. He wanted to say something but stopped himself, as though he was too embarrassed to do so. What's the matter? Su Zimo raised his brow slightly. Shi Jian hesitated for a moment before replying, Well, I'm also here for your blood quencher, Mr. Imo. Su Zimo's gaze turned cold. Bowing hurriedly, Shi Jian explained himself, However, that was not my intention. I can't defy my master's orders. I seek your understanding in this, fellow Taoist. Su Zimo noticed that Shi Jian's words were sincere and did not seem like he was lying. He truly had no choice. It was only then that Su Zimo's expression relaxed and the killing intent in his heart dissipated. Shi Jian continued, Mr. Imo, don't worry, I will definitely not harm your life. Furthermore, as an exchange, I will do my best to help guarantee a spot in the spirit ranking for you. There were 2 slots for every region. By saying that, Shi Jian was implying that he would try his best to help Su Zimo obtain the other spot in the wood region. Su Zimo smiled but did not say anything. Shi Jian did not know what happened in the water region, nor did he know of Su Zimo's motives. When he saw Su Zimo smile, he misunderstood and thought for a long time before saying, "Mr. Imo, I know that perfect spirit weapons are priceless. However, there's not much I can do. How about this? Apart from helping you obtain a spot in the spirit ranking, I'll give you all the treasures in my storage bag? There's no need to say anything more. Let's fight." Su Zimo said with a calm expression. "Ah." Shi Jian was stunned for a moment and asked confusedly, "Mr. Imo, do you want to fight me? If I didn't see wrongly, you only just advanced to 3 Meridian Foundation establishment while I'm at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment. You're not going to be my match." Su Zimo smiled and replied, "If you beat me, Blood Quencher will naturally be yours." Shi Jian pondered for a long time before nodding. However, his expression was still somewhat lost, as though he could not understand Su Zimo's intentions. Retrieving an alloy steel rod that was engraved with complicated patterns from his storage bag, Shi Jian injected spirit energy into it and the rod shone with 3 spirit patterns. It was a superior-grade spirit weapon. "Mr. Imo, you have to be careful. Southern Mountains sect prides ourselves in our strong physique and melee combat is our forte." As if afraid that Su Zimo would not know of his prowess, Shi Jian reminded again. Su Zimo nodded. After waiting for a while, Shi Jian noticed that Su Zimo's hands were still empty and the latter had not summoned any flying swords or other spirit weapons. Coughing gently, Shi Jian reminded him kindly, "Mr. Imo, you've got to use flying swords or other weapons against cultivators like us who specialize in melee combat. That way, you can increase the distance between us and prevent me from getting close." Shi Jian gestured in a serious manner and continued, "Look, the way you are right now, I'll be able to reach you within a few steps. It'll be too late for you to summon a flying sword by then. Within a single move, you will be defeated." Outside the 5 elements umbrella, the 100,000-odd cultivators stared in bewilderment. Shui could not help but lament, "This brother sure is truly a honest man." Chapter 327, Something Impossible. Chapter 327, Something Impossible. Su Zimo did not continue explaining to Shi Jian. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he took a step forward. Boom! With that single step, the ground shook. It was the stance of the plow heaven stride. At its maximum extent, it could even plow a ravine in the heavens. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had truly arrived nearby. Shi Jian's heart skipped a beat, and he had no time to think. Sensing the danger, he subconsciously struck out and the alloy steel rod in his hands shone brightly, sweeping towards Su Zimo. With an unchanged expression, Su Zimo welcomed the attack with his soft palm. Su Zimo's palm looked to be fair and weak as his long, slender fingers slid on the surface of the incoming long rod. With a sudden burst of strength, he coiled and trembled. "Ah!" Shi Jian exclaimed, and his hand cracked, blood dripping from his palm. That moment of distraction was all it took for Shi Jian's alloy steel rod to end up in Su Zimo's hands instead. That gigantic steel rod was pressed against Shi Jian's throat, emitting a cold and chilling aura. As long as Su Zimo exerted strength, Shi Jian's throat would be smashed to pieces. As Shi Jian had said, a single move was all it took. However, the one that lost was him, not Su Zimo. Throughout the entire process, Shi Jian was dumbfounded. He lost without even understanding anything. Even when Su Zimo returned the alloy steel rod by stuffing it in Shi Jian's hand, the latter could not really react to it and muttered instinctively, "Thank you." Shi Jian had a simple and honest character that was a little cute even. He did not have much animosity towards Su Zimo and merely had no choice. As such, Su Zimo would naturally not hurt his life. "How many cultivators are left in the wood region?" Su Zimo asked. Shi Jian's mind was in a mess. He was still thinking about what had happened earlier and replied, "I'm not sure about the exact figure. However, I'm certain that more than half have been eliminated." Su Zimo frowned. In other words, if he lingered too long in the wood region, it might already be too late by the time he crossed this region and another grade 4 killing formation to reach the metal region. After all, The battle royale in a region would end when there were only 2 people remaining. Those 2 would also be teleported out. Therefore, Su Zimo had to get to the metal region as soon as possible to get a chance to kill Feng Haoyu. Some cultivators were already noticing the activity around the area and were watching from afar. It looked like more were gathering. If he was surrounded by those cultivators again, Su Zimo might truly not make it in time. At that thought, his figure flashed and he tunneled into a dense forest at the side. "Mr. Imo, where are you going?" Shi Jian asked. "The metal region." After a while, Su Zimo's voice could be heard from deep within the forest. "Mr. Imo, you really love to joke? Metal region? Huh? You might as well say that you're flying into the heavens." Shi Jian rubbed the back of his head and mumbled before turning to leave. After walking for a while, when no one was around, Shi Jian retrieved his alloy steel rod from his storage bag all of a sudden. He had a grave expression as though he was met with a great enemy. With widened eyes, Shi Jian stared at the alloy steel rod in his hands for a long time. After a while, he slapped his head in realization. "I got it. During that fight earlier on, my rod was snatched away by Mr. Imo, and he returned it to me thereafter." "Mr. Imo is truly a nice guy," Shi Jian lamented. At the spectator area, Perfected Being Yun Shan frowned as he covered his face and gave a long sigh. In the wood region, there was a sumptuous variety of plants and leaves. Ancient trees, bushes, vines, and grasslands were connected together, green and full of vitality. Of course, that seemingly peaceful place also possessed endless killing intent. The forest was practically a paradise for spirit demons, and one would die there with a single misstep. Some cultivators had discovered Su Zimo's traces, but he burrowed into the forest before they could strike. Everyone had no choice but to chase after him. The onlookers outside the 5 Elements umbrella were seeing things more clearly. In their eyes, cultivators were being lured into the forest repeatedly without being able to escape. Those cultivators would often chase endlessly before losing track of Su Zimo. By the time they realized what was happening, they would already be surrounded by spirit demons. Is that Su Zimo born in the year of the monkey? Scurrying left and right, he's gone in the blink of an eye. At the spectator area, some of the golden cores grumbled indignantly when they saw their disciples being played like fools. When he heard that, Shinny chuckled internally. Back when he joined Ethereal Peak, Su Zimo's skills were truly similar to a monkey's as he scaled the walls of the steep mountain like he was on the ground. The Emperor frowned. He realized that he could no longer see through Su Zimo. How did a scholar from a remote town of a vassal state gain such capabilities? In the wood region, Su Zimo arrived at the edge without wasting too much time and dived headfirst into the Grade 4 killing formation. He was still cautious as ever, inching arduously towards the metal region step by step as though he was on thin ice. It was only then that the audience realized Su Zimo was truly able to cross 2 regions and killing formations to enter the metal region. However, was it possible for him to kill Feng Haoyu? Many cultivators had caught a rough glimpse of how Feng Haoyu was killing others as well. It was a one-sided crush. Apart from 5 spirit meridians and ethereal peaks, 3 major secret skills, Feng Haoyu seemed to be in possession of some unique secret skills that were sinister and mysterious. All of those methods not only showed how terrifying Feng Haoyu was, it enabled him to crush the other cultivators completely as well. One would not even consider killing someone like Feng Haoyu. In fact, even if Su Zimo merely wanted to defeat Feng Haoyu, it would be as difficult as ascending the heavens given his current capabilities. Perfected Lord Mingze pondered deeply. If Su Zimo can close into Feng Haoyu, there might be a chance of him winning. It's too difficult. The Emperor shook his head. Feng Haoyu possesses ethereal wings. Be it in terms of speed or agility, he is far superior compared to sword kinesis flight. There's no way Su Zimo will be able to close in. Pausing for a moment, the Emperor continued. In other words, even if Su Zimo could close in, the most he can do is defeat Feng Haoyu. How is he going to kill that guy? Perfected Lord Mingze nodded as well. In the worst-case scenario, Even if Feng Haoyu was not a match for Su Zimo, he had the escaped jade talisman in his possession that he could crush as long as he sensed something amiss about the situation. There were not many cultivators remaining in the metal region. Apart from Feng Haoyu, the other 5 Meridian cultivator, He Jiang of True Fire Sect was inside as well. Furthermore, both of them were enemies with Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo could barge into the metal region, it would be impossible for him to kill Feng Haoyu given such circumstances. Anigu, guess what will happen in the end? Demoness Ji whispered. Gu Shi's gaze swept past the face of the Blood Crow King who was nearby and shook her head. The outcome inside isn't important. Su Zimo has already offended that person from Blood Crow Palace, and he's doomed. Chapter 328, Final Battle. Chapter 328, Final Battle. The battle royales in the 5 regions were gradually coming to an end. The 1,000-odd cultivators in each region had whittled down to less than 100. These remaining cultivators were the strongest ones with the most methods. At the edge of the metal region, there was a huge, shimmering light screen that connected heaven and earth. There was no one nearby. Even spirit demons would not linger around this area. All of a sudden, a figure slowly walked out of the light screen. His green robes were almost drenched in sweat, and he could not conceal his fatigue. After crossing the killing formation, the green-robed cultivator's eyes were still closed as he sensed the long-awaited peace and tranquility around him. Letting out a deep sigh, he savored the feeling of life after escaping a calamity. A long time later, the green-robed cultivator opened his eyes and stared into the distance with a deep gaze, murmuring, "Here I come." In the 5 Elements umbrella, it was impossible for one to hide until the end. There were countless birds and beasts within every region of the 5 Elements umbrella. If any outsider were to linger in a certain place, they would definitely attract spirit demons to hunt them, and that would result in a battle, revealing their location. Even if they were lucky enough to escape the initial chaos, once a region has less than 50 people remaining, all of them would be teleported to the very core of the region for a final battle, no matter where they were located. This was the final battle, and at the end of the day, everything depended on one's strength. Metal region, core area. 50 beams of light flashed as figures appeared out of nowhere. Most of them were soaked in blood, and some were even injured. Only a rare few looked idyllic and were neatly attired. Among them, a corpse had been teleported here as well. It laid on the ground motionlessly, its body plump and its face mangled such that its appearance could no longer be made out. There was a deep gash on its neck that was horrifying to look at. In reality, if it was truly a corpse, it would not have been teleported over. However, now that the 50 cultivators were gathered all of a sudden, all of them became extremely nervous as though they were faced with great enemies. All of them pulled their distance away, and no one noticed the corpse on the ground. He Jiang of True Fire Sect held a small tripod cauldron in his left hand, while his right index finger controlled a flying sword that scanned the surroundings. Suddenly, his gaze landed on someone and froze with a deep killing intent. Feng Haoyu's hands were behind his back, and he had a haughty expression as he looked around casually. All of a sudden, his eyes narrowed and he smirked. The rest of the cultivator's attention was initially on Feng Haoyu and He Jiang, the 2 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Now that everyone saw the strange expressions on their faces, they could not help but look in the same direction. Not far away, a green-robed cultivator stood with a calm expression. He had delicate features, looking like a frail scholar. Su Zimo, Mr. Imo. Cries of surprises came from the crowd. The flesh on the corpse's face suddenly twitched. Su Zimo, I didn't expect you to persevere till now. I'm truly impressed. Feng Haoyu laughed as he clapped his hands. With Su Zimo's appearance, a magical change suddenly occurred on the battlefield. Many cultivators began to harbor designs on Su Zimo. The attraction of a perfect spirit weapon was too great for everyone. If they could steal Su Zimo's storage bag and crush their jade talismans to escape from the place, they would benefit even if they lost the rights for a spot in the spirit ranking. Su Zimo, you killed my younger brother. I'm going to make you pay with blood. Hejiang's voice was chilling to the bones with endless hatred. The surrounding cultivators summoned their flying swords and stared at Su Zimo with greed in their eyes. Feng Haoyu looked at the situation calmly and shrugged his shoulders gently, saying in a relaxed manner, "Seems like I don't even have to make a move myself. Su Zimo, you're now the common target. No one is going to help you." The moment Feng Haoyu said that, the corpse on the ground suddenly jumped up. That rotund body was surprisingly agile as it rolled across the ground. Arriving in front of a cultivator, it extended a chubby palm and slapped the escaped jade talisman that was hanging on the cultivator's waist. The person had a blank look on his face. Before he could even react, he was teleported out of the 5 elements umbrella by a beam of light. Extending its sleeves to wipe away the blood on its face and the gashed disguise on its neck, the corpse revealed a round face. It was Little Fatty of Ethereal Peak. Little Fatty pointed at Feng Haoyu and shouted, "What nonsense are you spouting, traitor? Am I not a person?" He ran to Su Zimo's side and whispered, "Bro, don't worry. I'm here. If that doesn't work out, we'll crush the jade talisman and escape." In reality, Little Fatty could have continued with his disguise and held on to the end, if not for the fact that he was worried Su Zimo had to fight alone. Little Fatty was not the only one who had thought up such a method. However, he was the one with the thickest skin. There were more than 100,000 cultivators and golden cores of various sects spectating outside. Which cultivator would want to disguise themselves as such and fake death to sail through the competition? Su Zimo patted Little Fatty's shoulder to reassure him before turning around and replying coldly, "Feng Haoyu, don't waste time talking. Prepare to die." Right after he said that, Su Zimo walked towards Feng Haoyu at a decent speed. "Go!" The eyes of one of the cultivators ahead lit up and he suddenly struck. Using his flying sword in one hand, he stabbed towards Su Zimo's glabella while conjuring a spirit seal with his other hand. Using Divine Steed Fleeting, Su Zimo suddenly accelerated, leaving a series of afterimages in the air as he dodged the incoming flying sword by a hair's breadth and appeared before that person instantaneously. That person merely saw a flash before his eyes as a massive fist landed on his head heavily. The next moment, that person felt a sharp pain in his head and lost consciousness completely. Everyone was shocked. Within a single round, that former Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator died on the spot before he could even conjure his spirit art. Everyone had heard that Su Zimo was strong in melee combat, but no one expected him to be this strong. Everyone dispersed one after another, distancing themselves from Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze was burning and was locked on Feng Haoyu right from the beginning. His killing intent was intensifying and a chilling aura emanated from him, as though he was a ferocious beast that was treading through a sea of corpses. Swoosh! All of a sudden, a shimmering pair of spirit wings flapped from Feng Haoyu's back. He soared into the air and looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile, his eyes filled with mockery. On the other side, Hejiang of True Fire Sect hollered, and his 5 Meridian spirit energy exploded. The flying sword in his hand quivered slightly, shining with 3 spirit lights. It was a superior-grade flying sword. "Go!" Hejiang hid far away and pointed forward. The sword seemed to be burning with a layer of flame as it streaked across the void. Even the air burned and produced an explosive sound. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At least dozens of flying swords shot out with ferocious auras, and they were all aimed at the same target, Su Zimo. Stunned, Little Fatty was rooted on the ground as the sight of everything sent chills down his spine. "Bro, crush the jade talisman," Little Fatty yelled. The only way for them to survive such an intense attack was to crush the escaped jade talisman. Chapter 329, Might of Candlelight. Chapter 329, Might of Candlelight. There was naturally no way Su Zimo was going to crush the jade talisman. For this moment, he had crossed 2 major regions and grade 4 killing formations. Everything he had experienced within was 100 times more precarious than the current situation. There was no way he was going to give up. Buzz! With a wave of his sleeves, 18 flying swords flew out from his storage bag. Each of them shone with 4 bedazzling spirit lights and vibrated vigorously. 18 supreme-grade flying swords. Many cultivators' eyes lit up. Even if they did not manage to obtain the perfect spirit weapon, it would be worth it if they could get their hands on a single supreme-grade spirit weapon. Perfected Lord Ming-Zhe said in a deep voice, "Although there are fewer cultivators this time round, they are much stronger. Furthermore, the 2-5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators are too much of a threat for Su Zimo even with his hexagonal sword formation. He's going to get injured." The Emperor nodded as well. Given the 2 of their cultivation realms, their judgment was naturally not wrong. However, the 2 of them were wrong about one thing. The 18 flying swords were not there to create the hexagonal sword formation. They were there for the Candlelight sword formation that Dao Lord Extreme Fire had obtained from the mysterious ruin. Zung, zung, zung. Speeding through the air, the 18 flying swords left behind streams of sword chi that shone brightly. Candlelight sword formation. Su Zimo hollered and pointed forward. Right after, the 18 flying swords gathered together with their tips pointing outwards in unison, forming a gigantic, sword-shaped, circular disc. 18 rays of sword chi were released like a blazing sun and was extremely dazzling. Ah! The surrounding cultivators narrowed their eyes and exclaimed. As soon as the sword formation was released, everyone felt a sharp pain on their bodies and their 5 senses went blurry. It was hard to tell if the pain was due to the searing heat released from the sun rays or the sword chi cutting through the body. The Foundation establishment cultivators in the square could not sense it clearly either. As for the golden cores that were at the spectator area, they were alarmed when they caught sight of the Candlelight sword formation. Even with the 5 elements umbrellas between them, everyone could sense the terrifying power of the Candlelight sword formation. This sword formation is so powerful. The Emperor's gaze froze as he secretly inhaled. Gu Shi was stunned as her beautiful eyes stared unblinkingly at the 5 elements umbrella. She leaned forward slightly without even realizing that her bosom was exposed as she tried to discover the origins of the Candlelight sword formation. As nascent souls, they could vaguely sense another aura from that sword formation. Vicissitude, desolate, ancient, and vaguely perceivable. That was an aura that was from the ancient era, or even beyond it. As the only sword formation master present, Xianyi had a different perception of the Candlelight sword formation. Through the sword scars left behind by the flying swords, Xianyi could tell that what Su Zimo released was a Grade 2 sword formation. While they were both Grade 2 sword formations, the Candlelight sword formation was much stronger than the hexagonal sword formation. On careful thought, even if it did not form a sword formation, the mere presence of 18 supreme-grade flying swords was a threat not to be underestimated. Now that such a terrifying sword formation was condensed, how powerful would that be? Clang, clang. The 2 flying swords collided against the Candlelight sword formation and let out crisp sounds. Right after, in front of everyone, those 2 flying swords were minced into fragments by the Candlelight sword formation and fell to the ground in shatters. Pissed. Outside the 5 elements umbrella, the crowd was in an uproar. Those 2 flying swords were not scrap metal, they were middle-grade flying swords. However, they were ground into pieces and wasted right after they collided with the Candlelight sword formation. Clang, 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 clang. The Candlelight sword formation circled around Su Zimo's body and emitted an extremely strong sword aura. With a flash of sword light, it smashed all the incoming flying swords. Middle-grade flying swords were shattered on the spot, turning into useless weapons. Only the superior-grade flying swords remained intact. However, they were still sent flying by the power of the Candlelight sword formation, dimming and falling to the ground. This was the first time that Su Zimo had released his Candlelight sword formation against enemies, and its power was far beyond his imagination. Little Fatty's mouth was agape, and his jaws nearly fell to the ground. Although the light of the sword formation dimmed significantly upon receiving such an impact, it was still spinning. The sound of the swords never ceased. but instead resounded clearer, piercing through metal and stone. The way it spun was as though it wanted to tear through the heavens and crush the earth. When the cultivators who attacked saw that, blood drained from their faces and they were quiet as cicadas in winter, afraid that Su Zimo would toss the sword-shaped, circular disc at them. At that instant, Su Zimo actually closed his eyes. His mind calmed down immediately, filled with emptiness. Time seemed to have frozen around him as Su Zimo's thoughts were churning at high speed. Every choice that followed was going to affect the final result. It was as the Emperor and everyone else had said. It was impossible for him to kill Feng Haoyu within the Five Elements umbrella. It wasn't because Su Zimo wasn't strong enough. It was because Feng Haoyu had an escaped jade talisman that he could use to leave at any time. Therefore, Su Zimo only had a single window of opportunity if he wanted to kill Feng Haoyu. Feng Haoyu was no fool and would definitely escape with his jade talisman if Su Zimo missed his strike. While the might of the Candlelight sword formation was great, it might not kill with a single hit. First, Feng Haoyu was at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment. Furthermore, his eyes were faint green, as though he had cultivated some secret skill of Blood Crow Palace. There was the chance that he might have other trump cards as well. Second, Feng Haoyu had cultivated ethereal wings and was extremely agile. There was a high chance he could avoid the sharpness of the Candlelight sword formation. While the Candlelight sword formation was not enough to kill Feng Haoyu, it was more than enough to kill someone else. All of a sudden, Su Zimo opened his eyes and sped towards Feng Haoyu with divine steed fleeting. However, his arm was pointed at He Jiang of True Fire Sect as he shouted, "Instant thunder!" Snap! There was a deafening sound. A bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm descended on He Jiang's head. However, the latter was extremely alert and had already crushed a protection talisman beforehand. Crack! 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 The power of the instant thunder collided against the protection talisman, causing the barrier that was formed by the talisman to disintegrate. Clang! Clang! Before He Jiang could catch his breath, the Candlelight sword formation released an extremely sharp sword chi and charged at him, tearing through the void as if it was ripping through a large cloth. He Jiang's expression changed in shock, his eyes filled with endless horror. It was only then that he realized. Su Zimo had no intention of killing him with that instant thunder earlier on. It was to keep him on the spot. The true killing move was the incoming Candlelight sword formation. The Candlelight sword formation was within reach, and it was too late to dodge by then. He Jiang's flying sword was already ground to pieces by the Candlelight sword formation. Thankfully, he had a superior-grade weapon tripod in his hands that could be used. Whoosh! He Jiang channeled the spirit energy in his dantian fanatically, and 5 spirit meridians shone with light like a river. The weapon tripod illuminated and expanded instantly, blocking in front of He Jiang. At the spectator area, many golden cores watched the scene unfold fixedly. Sima Ji and everyone else from True Fire Sect were nervous and could not contain their emotions. In fact, they were even standing up uncontrollably. Although they were golden cores, they knew too little about the Candlelight sword formation and thus, none of them could determine the outcome of this head-on battle using their naked eyes alone. Chapter 330, Secret Skills Fight. Chapter 330, Secret Skills Fight. The Candlelight sword formation transformed into a blazing sun that shone with endless sword chi as it shot towards the weapon tripod that He Jiang brought out. Clang! 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 The sword chi struck the surface of the weapon tripod repeatedly, letting out a deafening sound of metal clashing against each other. The brilliance emitted by the Candlelight sword formation was bedazzling and almost engulfed He Jiang along with his weapon tripod. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The sword beam faded and dimmed. Finally, the Candlelight sword formation broke apart as 18 flying swords scattered from midair and fell to the ground. Inside and outside the 5 Elements umbrella, all of the cultivators were staring intently. The massive weapon tripod was still blocking He Jiang's body as it emitted a weak glow. Although it was covered in white sword slashes, it was not destroyed. After all, It was a superior grade spirit weapon and was only a single grade lower than supreme grade. Hejiang was safe and sound behind the weapon tripod, merely looking somewhat pale with listless eyes. Everyone from True Fire Sect heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, phew. What a relief. Sima Ji, Elder Zhang, and the others exchanged glances of relief. What mattered was that he survived. It didn't matter if he suffered some shocks. Hejiang's a legacy disciple of True Fire Sect at the end of the day. He is rather capable. Some golden cores nodded silently. Of everyone present, only the nascent souls such as perfected Lord Mingzhe and Gu Shi did not speak. The Emperor was expressionless as he shook his head. Right then, streaks of blood appeared on Hejiang's initially pale face, opening up and expanding. Xing. The clothes on Hejiang's body were ripped apart without any warning. It was as if his body was penetrated by countless blood qi, leaving wounds all over his body in a horrifying manner. The clamor in the crowd disappeared. Under countless terrified gazes, Hejiang's face, neck, arms, legs, and every other part of his body spewed blood, forming a huge mist of blood. In that blood mist, Hejiang collapsed to the ground with dimmed eyes. He was no longer breathing. Even though the weapon tripod had managed to defend against the sharpness of the Candlelight sword formation, Hejiang was still sliced from head to toe by the sword qi of the formation. He was dead. A legacy disciple of True Fire Sect who was initially able to secure a spot in the spirit ranking for sure had died in the 5 Elements umbrella just like that. He did not even have the chance to release his escaped jade talisman. Sima Ji and everyone else swayed and sat down weakly while their minds were in a daze. Initially, True Fire Sect was going to have confirmed spots in the elixir, weapon, and spirit rankings. However, He Xing was slain by Su Zimo in the capital before the sect competition. Tao Feng attempted Mo clan's spirit gathering technique and was severely injured. Now, even He Jiang was dead. True Fire Sect had truly suffered an immense loss in this sect competition. Look! Someone pointed to the screen of the 5 Elements umbrella and yelled. In the metal region, Su Zimo charged towards Feng Haoyu at an extremely fast speed, leaving a series of bewitching afterimages in his wake. Feng Haoyu scoffed coldly. If they were on the ground, he would be wary towards Su Zimo. But now, he had ethereal wings and could maneuver in the air freely without the use of any external objects like golden cores. There was no way Su Zimo would be able to get close. Ethereal wings was a secret skill after all. Even if Su Zimo were to ride on his flying sword, he would be inferior compared to Feng Haoyu in terms of speed and agility. Buzz! Waving his robes, Feng Haoyu summoned 3 flying swords. All of them were superior grade. The fact that he possessed 3 superior grade flying swords as a Foundation establishment cultivator was a clear sign of his importance to Blood Crow Palace. Ever since he was defeated by Su Zimo in Ethereal Peak, Feng Haoyu had been cultivating diligently and practiced wielding multiple flying swords. Even though he could not create sword formations, his strength coupled with the use of Ethereal Sword was something not to be underestimated. The light on the swords brightly, but all of a sudden, they vanished. Level 2 of Ethereal Sword, Void. Su Zimo did not stop and kept closing the distance between him and Feng Haoyu. A bright light shone in his eyes while the middle finger and thumb of his left hand connected, forming a strange hand seal. The moment the hand seal was conjured, the spirit energy in Su Zimo's dantian channeled fanatically. 3 spirit meridians were faintly visible as spirit energy surged into the hand seal. Boom! Suddenly, a massive crack appeared in the skies and a golden palm reached out and descended. It emitted a holy aura as though it was about to suppress all the sins in the world. Fiend Suppression Seal. The spectator area was filled with golden cores with sharp gazes. All of them could sense the power of that hand seal. In midair, Feng Haoyu was completely unaware as he hollered, "Good timing. I'll let you have a taste of my capabilities." Controlling the 3 flying swords in midair to stab towards Su Zimo's charging figure, Feng Haoyu retrieved a white bone staff from his storage bag. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood that sprayed on his bone staff. When the essence blood landed on the bone staff, it strangely disappeared as though it was consumed. Right after, streaks of blood appeared on the staff, crystal clear and transparent. They were like the veins on the body of a living being and exuded an extremely vile aura. Feng Haoyu waved the bone staff and muttered something under his breath in an indecipherable language. Instantly, his eyes shone with a frightening shade of faint green. Condense. He gripped the bone staff tightly and pointed it towards the descending golden palm, shouting, "Roar!" A huge blood-colored skull appeared out of nowhere with a dark red glow of blood shining from its hollow sockets. Opening its massive mouth, it made a deafening roar towards the crushing golden palm. Through that roar, the blood-colored skull smashed violently towards the golden palm, as if it was going to devour it. As he watched everything unfold, the Emperor was expressionless. However, a glint streaked through his eyes. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe's expression was grave as he voice-transmitted with his spirit consciousness. It's truly a successor of the Forbidden Grounds. Gu Shi's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and the faint smile on her lips had disappeared as well. On the battlefield, although the 3 flying swords had disappeared, 3 faint waves of ripples appeared in midair like reeds tapping on water. Su Zimo lowered his height and was almost sprawled on the ground as he slithered forward like an anaconda without any speed reduction. Feng Haoyu seemed to have expected it as one of the flying swords changed trajectories all of a sudden, sticking to the ground headed for Su Zimo's back. Poof! A flash of bloodlight appeared. Was the outcome already decided? Everyone focused and saw that Su Zimo's figure had merely paused for a brief instant before continuing to charge forward. While there was a wound on his back, his vitals were not hurt. Without those 18 supreme-grade flying swords, Su Zimo's unable to create a sword formation. He's going to be beaten badly. If this drags on, he'll sustain more injuries and bleed even more. Su Zimo's definitely going to lose. Many cultivators discussed softly. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. There were some details that even golden cores might not be able to spot. However, since the 5 Elements umbrella was his dermic weapon, the Emperor could naturally sense every slight change within. To his surprise, Su Zimo did not lose much blood from the wound on his back. The muscles around the wound stuck together instantly, and Su Zimo was already showing signs of recovery. What a terrifying physique. The Emperor's heart jolted. Chapter 331. Sacrifice for the Saber. Chapter 331. Sacrifice for the Saber. The Fiend suppression seal that was condensed depleted almost all of Su Zimo's spirit energy. Su Zimo did not even bother to see the outcome of the clash between their secret skills. While he was sprinting, he retrieved a huge bow from his storage bag with his right hand, and 3 arrows were already loaded and aimed at Feng Haoyu, who was in midair. His action was fluid like water, as if he had practiced countless times. That seemingly ordinary bow suddenly shone with 4 spirit lights. It was a supreme-grade spirit weapon. His bow was like a full moon, and the arrows were like shooting stars. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 arrows tore through the air, and in an instant, 3 cold beams arrived in front of Feng Haoyu. It was too fast. At the same time, the blood-colored skull collided with the golden palm in midair. It devoured the golden palm in a single mouthful and paused for a moment. Cracks appeared on its head, bursting out with endless golden rays before exploding. Feng Haoyu dodged the 3 incoming cold beams, but was suddenly struck by the shockwave caused by the collision of the 2 secret skills. He stopped in his tracks and was a step too slow. Poof! A light of blood flashed as an arrow streaked past Feng Haoyu's cheek. It was a mere centimeter away from piercing his head. Crack! Crack! Feng Haoyu could not avoid the other 2 arrows completely, and they struck the wings that were spread out behind him. The pair of spirit wings shattered on the spot as Feng Haoyu's figure fell. Boom! At that moment, a loud bang came from below. The ground of the entire metal region was shaking as though the sky was collapsing. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, Su Zimo stomped harshly on the ground and leaped into the air purely using the burst of his body. In the blink of an eye, he was above Feng Haoyu's head. That was a full 100 feet high. Even golden cores might not be able to jump that high with their physiques. Bang! Boom! Boom! Splash! Immediately after, the cultivators outside the Five Elements umbrella heard a series of strange sounds. It was like rolling thunder, but it also seemed like a tsunami was surging, and it was mixed with the violent sound of tigers and leopards. It was extremely unsettling. All of those sounds came from within Su Zimo's body. Feng Haoyu, you shall be a sacrifice for my saber today. A long and thick saber that was as tall as half a person suddenly appeared in Su Zimo's hands. Spirit energy surged into it as 5 spirit patterns illuminated with a blinding bloodlight. The birth of Bloodquencher. The huge blade was scarlet and quivered violently, letting out a murderous sound and aura that rattled one's soul. Die! As Su Zimo channeled his bloodline, his entire body seemed to expand. He grabbed Bloodquencher with both hands and descended from the skies, cleaving down onto Feng Haoyu's head with an unstoppable might. Bloodquencher seemed to be perfectly synergized with Su Zimo's bloodline, and a trace of blood appeared on its blade. The void seemed to have been torn asunder by Bloodquencher. Su Zimo had waited for this slash for far too long. Be it the initial Fiend suppression seal, or the 3 arrows in the interim, they were all preparations made for this slash to render Feng Haoyu in an inescapable position. This strike was the cumulation of Su Zimo's attacks. This was also the most powerful attack he could produce without exposing his demonic cultivation. A complete fusion of his physique, bloodline, and spirit energy coupled with the lethality of Bloodquencher. Su Zimo was certain that Feng Haoyu would die for sure. Feng Haoyu raised his head slightly and blood drained from his face when he saw that. It was as though he had returned to that moment a couple of years ago when he was tragically defeated in Spirit Peak's arena. However, a couple of years ago, they were sect mates. Now, they were mortal enemies. This time round, Su Zimo did not hold back. In a flash, Feng Haoyu did not have the time to hesitate as he swiped his palm across his storage bag and retrieved a blood-colored shield that expanded and blocked above his head. Boom! An explosion rang out when Bloodquencher struck the surface of the blood-colored shield. Feng Haoyu's entire body shuddered as though he was struck by lightning as his eyes widened in horror. Without thinking twice, he withdrew the escape jade talisman and crushed it instantly. A flash of light shone. Clang! The blood-colored shield fell to the ground and its color faded. Cracks appeared on its surface. A single strike by Bloodquencher had destroyed it. Feng Haoyu's body flickered and disappeared from the metal region. A burst of light appeared in the square as Feng Haoyu appeared, lying on the ground with a pale expression. The Blood Crow King appeared before Feng Haoyu in a flash. Lowering his head, he looked at Feng Haoyu with widened eyes that were laced with boundless killing intent. Su. Zimo. The Blood Crow King's voice was chilling to the bone as he enunciated each and every word clearly. Feng Haoyu seemed like he wanted to say something. However, the moment he opened his mouth, he spat out a puddle of blood with big pieces of blood clot within. It was a frightening sight, and all the cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. The blood clots that Feng Haoyu had spat out were his crushed organs. A single slash. Even though Feng Haoyu had managed to escape from the Five Elements umbrella, his internal organs were completely crushed by Su Zimo's saber, and there was no way he was going to survive. Everyone fell silent. Feng Haoyu, who had cultivated the 3 major secret skills of Ethereal Peak and was 2 cultivation realms higher than Su Zimo, was cleaved to death by a single slash. This outcome had completely surpassed everyone's expectations. Something that was thought to be impossible had happened right in front of everyone. Xian sighed gently with a complicated expression. When Xian, did you see that? A disciple of Ethereal Peak has personally retrieved Feng Haoyu's lifetime of cultivation. You can finally rest in peace now that your wish has been fulfilled. Some golden cores shook their heads in silence. Betraying one's ancestor, masters and killing of their fellow sect mates was a huge taboo in the cultivation world. Now that Feng Haoyu was in this state, it could be considered retribution. Speaking of which, the light of providence is indeed shining on Ethereal Peak for them to be able to produce a monstrous character every once in a while. Who else is there apart from Su Zimo? That invincible foundation establishment cultivator 1,000 years ago. Ah, that guy. I heard that he betrayed the sect and fell into the fiend path thereafter. Upon hearing the discussions around her, Demoness Ji rolled her eyes and suddenly moved beside Gu Shi, asking with a voice transmission, Auntie Gu, are they referring to that person from Zenith sect? Yes, Gu Shi replied with an unchanged expression. Demoness Ji giggled. Auntie Gu, I heard that your relationship with that man isn't simple. Tell me more about it. Get lost. Gu Shi glared at Demoness Ji, her tone laced with a hint of reproachfulness and flirtatious allure. The battle royale in the various regions of the Five Elements umbrella was coming to an end. In the metal region, Su Zimo landed on the ground and waved his sleeves before putting away the 18 supreme-grade spirit weapons on the ground in his storage bag. His showdown with Feng Haoyu had ended too quickly. It was basically over within less than 2 rounds and nobody had the time to steal a supreme-grade flying sword and leave. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo said indifferently, Fellow Taoists, please leave. The spots of this region will be taken up by Ethereal Peak. It was a simple statement, but it contained unquestionable dominance. Instantly, little Fatty felt his blood boil and wished that he could roar out. Stumbling to Su Zimo's side, he puffed his chest and looked around with his beady eyes. It felt as though everything else was far inferior compared to the paragon beside him. Chapter 332, Conflict. Chapter 332, Conflict. The Battle Royale was at its finale in the water region, with less than 10 people left. Apart from Ji Chengtian of Ethereal Peak, who was watching from afar, the remaining few 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators had given their all for the last spot. Shinmingqi was injured. While it was not serious, she did not have the time to treat her wounds and blood was flowing continuously. Coupled with the lack of stamina and her spirit energy depleted, she could not hold on any longer. Heis. She sighed softly. Although she was unwilling, her life was more important. She could only crush the escaped Jade Talisman and leave the 5 Elements umbrella helplessly. When she returned to the square, Shinmingqi hurriedly took out a few elixirs from her storage bag and swallowed them. She then scattered some hemostatic medicine and bandaged her wounds. Throughout the entire process, her lips were pursed in silence. She was indignant. Just a little more, and she would have obtained a spot on the spirit ranking. Just a little more, and she would have obtained the rights to enter the ancient battlefield. Even though she could only cultivate within for a year, that would ensure that she could unlock 1 or even 2 more spirit meridians, bringing her to a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment realm. I will participate in the next sect competition 10 years later and definitely obtain a spot on the spirit ranking by then. As Shinmingqi pondered and was about to return to the crowd, she swept her gaze casually and caught sight of Feng Haoyu lying nearby, dead with his body covered in blood. Her pupils constricted subconsciously. Feng Haoyu was a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator who had cultivated Ethereal Peak's 3 major secret skills. That was someone who was almost guaranteed to obtain a spot in the spirit ranking. Who could have killed him? Shinmingqi's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Instinctively, she turned around and could not help but shudder. Her mouth opened slightly as her eyes widened in disbelief. She caught sight of a familiar figure in the metal region. He had actually crossed 2 major regions and grade 4 killing formations? Could he truly have been the one to kill Feng Haoyu? Right after, Shinmingqi heard something. Fellow Taoists, please leave. The spots of this region will be taken up by Ethereal Peak. His tone was casual, as if he was chatting. However, none of the 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators dared to refute him. After a while, one of them shook his head gently and cupped his fists towards that person, crushing his jade talisman without a second word. After that man left, The remaining cultivators in the metal region left one after another despite how reluctant they were. How could any of the cultivators within dare to stay on when even both the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators had met such an end? When she saw that, Shunmingqi's eyes gradually dimmed. If back then, perhaps I might be the one standing beside him right now. A wave of bitterness suddenly surged in Shunmingqi's heart. One by one, names appeared on the spirit ranking. Su Zimo, Ji Chengtian, Little Fatty, Shi Jian, Jun Hao, Si Yutong. Xian Yi and Lu Hui looked pleased, unable to conceal their joy. Even though Ethereal Peak suffered an immense blow 3 years ago, they shone completely during this sect competition. Putting aside the fact that they had 3 spots for the spirit ranking, they had even managed an unprecedented top spot for the weapon ranking. Of course, to Xian Yi and Lu Hui, the most important thing was that Su Zimo was alive. Furthermore, Su Zimo had taken revenge for the fallen cultivators by killing the traitor Feng Haoyu in front of everyone. However, for some reason, the both of them felt an inexplicable sense of frustration and unease. Before long, the last 10 people of the Spirit Ranking Battle Royale appeared. With the completion of the Spirit Ranking, it meant that the sect competition was about to end. The Emperor rose and said, "The names on the 4 ranking lists are out. Among them, those who obtained 2 spots on the different lists can decide to bring someone else along." Little Fatty whispered, "Bro, I think he's referring to you." Su Zimo nodded. He had obtained 2 spots on the weapon and spirit rankings. Apart from himself, he can give one of them to someone else. He had decided on who he wanted to give that spot to a long time ago. When she heard that, Shunmingqi felt her heart skip a beat as she looked at Su Zimo instinctively with a hint of anticipation. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe declared loudly, "The sect competition is over. Cultivators on the 4 ranking lists, follow me to the palace to select your rewards for the competition. Thereafter, all of you will return to rest while awaiting the opening of the ancient battlefield." Hold on. Suddenly, a cold and chilling voice laden with killing intent rang. Everyone looked over and saw the Blood Crow King walk slowly towards the spectator area. He exuded a terrifying aura as he fixed his gaze on Su Zimo and hissed coldly, "I'm taking him with me." "No." Xian Yi slammed the table and stood up without hesitation. The Blood Crow King's gaze flickered as he reached out with his withered palm and grabbed toward Xian Yi through the void. A terrifying burst of energy burst forth from the void. Demonic chi surged into the sky as a withered and bloody claw appeared, clawing at Xian Yi ruthlessly. At the spectator area, many golden cores felt a chill. That energy was way too strong and had already surpassed the limits of spirit energy. That was a true dermic art. That cultivator known as Shueya was actually a fiend demon at nascent soul realm. At the thought of that, everyone was even more shocked. It was one thing for a fiend demon to appear in the capital, but for him to actually attack right in front of the Emperor. What sort of guts and backing did he possess? Xian Yi's face turned pale. He was almost powerless against that pressure. Furthermore, that claw of the Blood Crow King had sealed all of his escape routes. Zung, zung, zung. Gritting his teeth, Xian Yi struck out forcefully against the might of the fiend demon and pulled out 6 flying swords from his storage bag. He guided with his finger and swiftly produced a star-shaped sword formation. Hexagonal sword formation. Even though Xian Yi did not manage to cultivate a golden core phenomenon, his hexagonal sword formation was enough to compensate and put him on the same level as those who did. Go! He pointed forward. The hexagonal sword formation burst forth with endless sword chi and charged violently towards the blood-colored claw. Hee, you overestimate yourself. The Blood Crow King let out a cold laugh as he clenched the claw. Splash! Instantly, Xian Yi's hexagonal sword formation was torn to pieces by the Blood Crow King, and the 6 superior-grade flying swords were snapped on the spot, falling to the ground. The difference was too great. The gap between a golden core and nascent soul was something that was almost impossible to cross. Bastard, how dare you! Suddenly, A roar burst forth from the spectator area. It was like a great bell and possessed boundless majesty. A gigantic fist appeared in midair and smashed heavily against the Blood Crow King's palm. Boom! The two dermic arts clashed and dissipated suddenly while the surrounding golden cores fell to the ground with frightful faces from the aftershock. It was the Emperor who had struck to stop the Blood Crow King. Tisk, TSK, TSK. The Blood Crow King gave a sympathetic smile as he glared at the Emperor. Ji Fong, don't be a busybody. Otherwise, your great Zhou dynasty is going to be destroyed because of this. There are some people that you can't afford to offend even if you're the emperor of a dynasty. Chapter 333, Retreat. Chapter 333, Retreat. Ji Fong was the name of the emperor of Great Zhou. It had been many years since nobody had dared call him by his name, let alone under such public attention. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe strode forward with a cold expression and hollered, "Blood Crow King, this is the capital of Great Zhou. It's not a place for you to be impudent." Even though he said that, Perfected Lord Ming Zhe did not make a move. He was well aware of the Blood Crow King's background. Without the Emperor's orders, he did not dare act rashly either lest he brought forth unnecessary trouble for the Great Zhou dynasty. "I'm going to repeat myself. I'm leaving with Su Zimo today." The Blood Crow King surveyed his surroundings before fixing his cold gaze on the Emperor and saying slowly, "Anyone who stops me will be going against Blood Crow Palace." Piak. The Emperor's palm slammed down heavily, causing the table beside him to split. He stood up slowly with a sharp killing intent in his eyes. Just as he was about to speak, an old voice rang out in his mind. "Ji Fong, let's ignore this matter." The Emperor's heart skipped a beat when he heard that voice. If it was anyone else's persuasion, the Emperor would hesitate. However, the person who spoke was the patriarch of the Ji family, the founder of the Great Zhou dynasty. This was an old monster who had lived for nearly 10,000 years. It was also due to his existence that the Great Zhou dynasty was able to remain standing for 10,000 years without collapsing and rule over the regions. The words of Patriarch Ji were like an imperial edict that could not be denied. Under the gazes of countless people, the Emperor had just stood up when he slowly sat down. His aura had vanished without a trace, and he looked somewhat terrible. "Father." Ji Yaoshue seemed to have realized something as she called out softly. The Emperor closed his eyes and shook his head, indicating that he was helpless. Instantly, Ji Yaoshua's expression turned incomparably pale. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes as well, feeling secretly alarmed. If the Emperor refused to do anything under such circumstances, Xin Yi and Lu Hui alone would not be able to stop the Blood Crow King. In other words, the Blood Crow King was definitely going to take him away today. It was needless to imagine the outcome of that. Suddenly, Su Zimo realized that even though the man who had hunted him previously ended up in a pathetic state due to the might of the divine dragon, that man was way more terrifying than he had imagined. At the very least, even the Great Zhou dynasty had to avoid going against them. "Fufu." The Blood Crow King chuckled and nodded. "Not bad. That's the way." Noticing that the situation was not right, Demoness Ji hurriedly sent out a voice transmission and urged, "Anigu, quickly think of a way. Su Zimo will definitely die if he's taken away." "What can I do?" She shook her head. "I told you earlier that the outcome inside the Five Elements umbrella isn't important. Su Zimo is doomed for offending Blood Crow Palace. But we can't sit by idly and watch him get taken away. Do something, Anigu." Demoness Ji frowned lightly. "It's useless," Gushi replied indifferently. "Even if I manage to save him this time, he will still have to die when he returns from the ancient battlefield. Besides, Ethereal Peak will be implicated and might be annihilated." "Inform that senior." The moment Demoness Ji spoke, Gushi interrupted her. "He's from Zenith Sect, and what they cultivate is the Tao of Heartlessness. Do you think he's going to do anything?" Demoness Ji replied firmly, "Anigu, we'll talk about the future later on. But you must definitely save Su Zimo this time round." Gushi did not comment and merely sighed gently. The Blood Crow King arrived not far away from Suzimo and smiled coldly, revealing a sinister set of white teeth. He said faintly, "Suzimo, accept your fate." Boom! Reaching out with his palm that seemed to traverse through the endless void, the Blood Crow King arrived before Suzimo in an instant. Xin-Yi, Lu Hui, and the others had no time to save him at all. Furthermore, even if the two of them struck, they would not be able to go against the might of the Blood Crow King. Bang! Suddenly, a slender and delicate hand appeared in front of Suzimo. Despite its frail look, the Blood Crow King's palm was repelled with ease. The Blood Crow King's expression changed. He narrowed his gaze and met with a pair of enchanting eyes that rippled like spring water. In the blink of an eye, the Blood Crow King was lost in them and was dazed. To everyone else, Gushi's eyes did nothing and were merely staring at the Blood Crow King peacefully. However, to the Blood Crow King, Gushi's eyes seemed to be glowing with a bewitching light that possessed a mysterious power, controlling his mind and bewildering everything. All of a sudden, there was a flash of blood from the depths of the Blood Crow King's eyes as another kind of power was produced within his body, one that was extremely evil. Snapping to his senses in a shock, the Blood Crow King felt a sharp pain in his eyes. "You dare go against Blood Crow Palace?" The Blood Crow King regulated his breathing and asked sharply. However, he did not dare look at Gushi again. Gushi replied indifferently, "Go back. This person's under my guard. Can you afford to protect him? At the very least, you're not going to take him away today." The Blood Crow King's face was livid. He stood on the spot and pondered for a long time before nodding slowly. Very well. Once my master comes out a year later, we'll see who's able to protect him then." Soaring into the skies, the Blood Crow King transformed into a pitch-black crow with bloodshot eyes. He sped into the horizons and vanished before long. Everyone from Ethereal Peak heaved a sigh of relief. During that clash, they truly thought that the Blood Crow King was going to take Suzimo away. Suzimo turned around and bowed deeply to Gushi. "Thank you for your help, Senior." "Yes." Gushi nodded and said nothing else. However, everyone felt differently about what they just saw. Most of the sects were interested in watching the drama of Suzimo being taken away by the Blood Crow King. There were even some like True Fire sect that were gloating over his misfortune. Furthermore, everyone could tell that even the Emperor was unwilling to provoke Blood Crow Palace and instead chose to remain silent. However, no one expected that Gushi would step forth to save Suzimo. Could Sky Treasure Auction House be even more powerful than the entire Great Zhou dynasty to be able to go against Blood Crow Palace? Everyone could vaguely sense that Gushi was not as simple as she seemed, a mere chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe coughed gently and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, quiet down. Cultivators of the ranking lists, follow me into the palace to select your rewards." Suzimo escorted Xin-Yi, Lu Hui, and the other Ethereal Peak cultivators to Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop before following Perfected Lord Ming Zhe into the palace. Nianqi was about to break through a critical juncture in the past 2 days and did not go to spectate the sect competition. She was relatively safe as Suzimo had arranged for Night Spirit to stand guard in Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. This time round, Suzimo obtained spots on both the weapon and spirit rankings. As such, he could select a spirit weapon and a secret spirit art. Suzimo did not have much interest in the spirit weapon. There was no way the Great Zhou dynasty was going to give out perfect or Connate spirit weapons as rewards, while Suzimo was not interested in spirit weapons of any other grade. However, the Great Zhou dynasty had been established for close to 10,000 years, and there were definitely many secret spirit art manuals hidden in the palace. Suzimo was truly interested to see if he could get his hands on some lost secret skill. Chapter 334, Connate Spirit Weapon Forging Technique. Chapter 334, Connate Spirit Weapon Forging Technique. Suzimo circled the spirit weapon chamber in the palace and did not see anything he wanted. eventually leaving with a casual superior-grade spirit weapon. Not far from the spirit weapon chamber was the secret manual chamber. Everyone else on the spirit ranking had already entered, and Suzumo followed suit. There were 3 levels in the secret manual chamber. Suzumo and the others were only allowed to select a secret spirit art from the first level and make a copy to leave with. The secret manual chamber was filled with rows of bookshelves and various types of bamboo scrolls arranged in an orderly manner. Evil hands. This was a secret skill. According to the description on the bamboo scroll, the skill could defend against a spirit weapon head-on and even snatch the opponent's spirit weapon. Omni-Wind. This was a movement technique. Once cultivated, one would be abnormally agile and possess erratic movement. There were 8 foundational points which could give birth to 64 different variations. It was extremely powerful. Suzumo walked along the bookshelves and looked slowly. The many secret skill manuals were an eye-opener for him. Some of them were cryptic, and Suzumo had never heard of them before. It was a novel experience. However, there was no spirit art that he took particular interest in throughout his walk. Suddenly, his gaze paused. Connate spirit weapon forging technique. Frowning slightly, Suzumo picked up a scroll made up of withered hide. The disheveled old man of Ethereal Peak had once told him that the limit of a weapon refinement master was refining perfect spirit weapons with 5 spirit patterns. Connate spirit weapons had a 6th spirit pattern, the Connate pattern. The Connate pattern was born from the spirit chi of heaven and earth and wasn't something that could be made by man. As Suzumo's understanding of weapon refinement deepened, he agreed that the disheveled old man was not wrong. The birth of Blood Quencher further proved that point. The condensation of a 5th spirit pattern already required immense opportunities and a weapon refinement master's perfect mental fortitude and condition. That was not even including the providence within the voids. As such, a 6th spirit pattern was further out of the question. As the number 1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou, given his skill in weapon refinement, Suzumo was filled with extreme disdain towards this Connate spirit weapon forging technique. He merely took it to be a nonsensical piece of work by an arrogant and ignorant weapon refinement master. Suzumo was about to return the hide manual when his heart stirred, and he took a look at the contents as if he was possessed. After a while, his gaze flickered in deep thought. "Bro, have you chosen?" Right then, Little Fatty's voice rang out as he ran over excitedly. Suzumo turned over and saw Little Fatty waving a bamboo scroll and whispering, "I found a secret skill that's extremely suitable for me." Heh. Smiling, Suzumo turned to look at the hide manual in his hands. A flash of determination swept through his eyes as he said in a low voice, "Let's go. I've chosen mine too." Arriving at the entrance, Suzumo and Little Fatty handed their bamboo scroll and hide manual respectively to an old man. The old man received and took a look at them. Suddenly, he frowned and raised his head to look at Suzumo with a strange expression before reminding out of kindness, "Lad, this forging technique is the ramblings of a madman. He didn't even manage to accomplish it himself. Are you sure you want a copy of this?" "Yes." Suzumo nodded. The old man smiled and did not persuade further. He made 2 copies and handed them to Suzumo and Little Fatty. Upon leaving the secret manual chamber, Little Fatty asked curiously, "Bro, what secret skill did you choose? Why did the old man say that?" Connate spirit weapon forging technique. Suzumo did not hide anything either. Ah! Little Fatty was dumbfounded. Even though he was not a weapon refinement master, he knew some common knowledge about the cultivation world, such as how Connate spirit weapons were born from the spirit chi of heaven and earth. Connate spirit weapons can be refined? Little Fatty could not even speak coherently anymore. Suzumo shook his head. "I'm not sure. This hide manual merely mentions a possibility. I can't be sure since I haven't tried it before." In reality, rather than calling it a forging method, the Connate spirit weapon forging technique was more like a restoration technique. The hide manual mentioned a method. First, one had to obtain a damaged Connate spirit weapon. The so-called damage did not refer to the spirit weapon itself, but the breaking of the sixth spirit pattern. Coincidentally, Suzumo had such a damaged Connate spirit weapon in his storage bag, the mystic gold silk armor. Second, he had to search for a Connate spirit fire. The Connate spirit fire was much more terrifying than a level 3 spirit fire. Possessing a higher temperature and sentience, it was often hidden deep underground and was rare to come across. Even if it was a damaged Connate spirit weapon, there were no impurities within. In other words, by using a Connate spirit fire to forge a Connate spirit weapon, one could ignore the first 4 steps of weapon refinement completely and head straight to spirit gathering once the spirit weapon was heated to a scarlet red state. Because the temperature of the Connate spirit fire was too high, even weapon tripods could not withstand it. As such, spirit gathering could only be conducted without the protection of a weapon tripod. After condensing 5 spirit patterns in a row, one could use the sentience of a Connate spirit fire for a possibility of repairing the 6th Connate spirit pattern. While everything sounded simple, one would realize that it was completely ridiculous upon careful thought. Before this, there was no weapon refinement master in Tianhuang mainland who could ensure a 100% success rate of condensing 4 spirit patterns, let alone 5 or 6. Furthermore, the entire process had to be done without the protection of a weapon tripod. The slightest mistake would cause the weapon refinement master to die on the spot. Which weapon refinement master would risk their lives to restore a damaged Connate spirit weapon with a success rate less than 1 in 1,000? But now, the most dangerous and difficult part of the entire process has become much simpler for Suzumo. If there was a person in Tianhuang mainland who could restore Connate spirit weapons, it would have to be Suzumo. Of course, what the forging technique mentioned was merely a possibility. After all, no one had attempted it, and there was no guarantee for its success. Suzumo was not adamant about it, merely memorizing the forging technique in his heart to wait for an opportunity. Not long after the two of them waited in the secret manual chamber, Long Ro walked out of the talisman hall. Her expression was cold and no one could read her emotions. "How was it, Sister Long Ro? You've reaped quite a bit, right?" Little Fatty leaned over and asked with a cheeky smile. "Yes." Long Ro nodded and her gaze shifted, looking at Suzumo in a seemingly unintentional manner. Coincidentally, Suzumo glanced over as well. He smiled and said, "Senior Sister Long, I've wanted to refine a spirit weapon for you. However, I was not skilled enough previously and did not have the chance to do so. This flying sword is for you. Do see if it's suitable." Suzumo took out a flying sword from his storage bag and handed it to Long Ro. She received it over and injected spirit energy into it. Instantly, spirit lights shone from the blade. It was a supreme-grade flying sword. "Ah!" Long Ro exclaimed and lost her composure. Back then, she had refined 2 Grade 2 talismans specially for Suzumo. Even though he said nothing at that time, he had always remembered it. Suzumo commended, "If it's not suitable, I've got some other here. You can also customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon with me. Just let me know of your requests." Long Ro replied hurriedly, "It's pretty good, but it's too expensive." In a casual manner, Suzumo replied, "It's fine. These are the only things I have plenty of." Little Fatty was stunned and thought to himself, "Bro truly has game. I've got to learn more from him in the future." Chapter 335, 9 Forbidden Grounds. Chapter 335, 9 Forbidden Grounds. According to Little Fatty, after the battle at Dongling Valley 3 years ago, Monkey fell into a frenzy and almost went insane, nearing causing a huge disaster. Thankfully, he was protected by Senior Crane. However, Monkey was disheartened and chose to leave Ethereal Peak with the Spirit Tiger following suit. During that period of time, Little Crane, Monkey, and the Spirit Tiger had an extremely good relationship. If it wasn't for Senior Crane stepping in, Little Crane would have left with them as well. To Suzumo, it was not necessarily a bad thing that Monkey left Ethereal Peak. It had an arrogant personality and did not like to be restricted. Without him around, it was bound to cause trouble, and it was better off returning to the barren mountains. Given Monkey's abilities, coupled with the fact that the spirit tiger was with it, they should not be in any danger. Suzimo, Xiaoning, Little Fatty, Long Ro, and Ji Qingtian were about to leave the palace when they caught sight of a girl in pink and wearing a veil standing at the entrance of the palace. She looked very quiet, as though she was waiting for someone. Little Fatty and the rest had some impression of the girl in pink. She accompanied Chief Steward Gu Shi to watch the sect competition and seemed to have an impressive background. "Bro, she should be looking for you, right?" Little Fatty asked softly. Before the sect competition ended, the Blood Crow King created trouble. Under the circumstances where even the Emperor of Great Zhou remained silent, Gu Shi stood out and protected Su Zimo. That was something everyone witnessed. Naturally, Su Zimo knew that the girl in pink was Demoness Ji, but he did not explain. Arriving before Demoness Ji, Su Zimo cupped his fists in a composed manner. "Help me thank Senior Gu for her life-saving grace." "Humph." Demoness Ji snorted and rolled her eyes at Su Zimo, pretending to be angry. "I should be the one you should thank. If I didn't plead for you, do you think that Auntie Gu would have bothered about you?" Little Fatty and the others circled their gazes between Su Zimo and Demoness Ji with strange expressions. Demoness Ji's tone did not sound like she was blaming him. Instead, it was more like she was wheedling. Furthermore, from what she said, it seemed like the relationship between the two of them was not simple. Lung Ro frowned slightly and said nothing. "Thank you, Dem." Miss Ji, Su Zimo almost blurted the word Demoness and hurriedly changed. She giggled and pondered for a moment. "I'm here to tell you something. That man from Blood Crow Palace is someone Ethereal Peak can't afford to offend. After entering the ancient battlefield, you had better not return to Great Zhou. It'll be best if you can leave the Tianhuang North region entirely." Su Zimo frowned. Demoness Ji reminded, "Think about the Emperor's attitude today, and I'm sure there are some things you will understand." She was implying that even the Emperor of Great Zhou was unwilling to offend Blood Crow Palace. As such, Su Zimo should make use of the chance to enter the ancient battlefield to leave the Tianhuang North region. "What's the background of Blood Crow Palace?" Su Zimo could not help but ask. Demoness Ji replied, "There's a total of 9 forbidden grounds in Tianhuang mainland. Be it humans or demons, they will definitely die upon entering the forbidden grounds. 2 of them are located in the Tianhuang North region, and the founder of Blood Crow Palace should be from one of them." 9 forbidden grounds. Su Zimo and the rest were shocked. Even though this was the first time hearing of that term, all of them felt a chill run down their spines. What were the 9 forbidden grounds such that a single person from within could strike fear into the entire Great Zhou dynasty? How terrifying were the forbidden grounds? That's all. Brushing past Su Zimo, Demoness Ji paused for a moment and sent a voice transmission. "If you take this opportunity to join the Fiend sects, you can avoid this calamity." With that said, Demoness Ji left. Ji Qingtian and the others had terrible expressions, frowning and deep thoughts. They were no fools. Even if Demoness Ji had not said anything, all of them could tell that Blood Crow Palace did not have a simple background. For people like Su Zimo, Little Fatty, and the others who had not joined the sect for a long time and did not have deep feelings for Ethereal Peak, there was no need for them to stay in the sect knowing that it might be annihilated. "Bro, what do you think?" Little Fatty could not help but ask on the way back. Su Zimo did not say anything. The ancient battlefield was indeed a great opportunity for one to leave the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty or the Tianhuang North region. Sometime later, the various factions and sects of Tianhuang mainland would have experts opening up a passageway to the ancient battlefield using their supreme dermic powers. As long as Su Zimo and the others found other passages during that 1 year within, they could exit using a different path when it was time to return, and they would be teleported out of the Great Zhou dynasty. In fact, they might even be teleported to the south and west regions, or somewhere in the middle continent. However, Su Zimo was hesitant. He was different from others. It was not because he had deep feelings for Ethereal Peak. He was worried that his departure would implicate his older brother in Yin country, Su Hong. If even the Great Zhou dynasty was unwilling to go against Blood Crow Palace, the Imperial Edict would naturally be unable to protect Su Hong. He was someone that Blood Crow Palace would definitely want to kill. The people of Blood Crow Palace were evil and capable of killing all living beings in a city. If they did not find him, Blood Crow Palace might find clues leading them to Su Hong in a fit of anger, and that was something Su Zimo did not want to happen. Before long, Su Zimo and the others returned to Mo's spirit weapon workshop. When they arrived at the entrance, he was surprised to see someone. It was Shenmengqi. Su Zimo frowned, not knowing why she had come. Brother, ignore her. Su Xiaoning knew what happened in Pingyang Town back then, and was naturally displeased with Shenmengqi. Zimo. When she saw Su Zimo and the others walking over, Shenmengqi took the initiative to head up first. Looking uneasy, she revealed a smile and called out. Yes? Su Zimo asked calmly. Zimo, it's like this. She hesitated for a moment before saying, I see that you have obtained spots on both the weapon and spirit rankings. If that's the case, you have an additional one. Shenmengqi did not continue, merely looking at Su Zimo somewhat nervously in anticipation. He replied indifferently, I already have someone in mind. Ah. Her eyes dimmed in disappointment. Forcing a smile, she asked, Can I ask who it is? My spirit beast. Su Zimo did not choose to hide the truth. He had intended to take Night Spirit along for that spot. The reason why he did not choose Nianqi was because if he had to choose between the two of them, it would have to be Night Spirit. Even though Nianqi had been by Su Zimo's side for 3 years, comparatively, he had a deeper relationship with Night Spirit despite the fact that it was a spirit beast. Furthermore, Nianqi's current cultivation realm wasn't high and was only at late-stage foundation establishment. It might not be a good thing for her to enter the ancient battlefield. When she heard that, Shenmengqi was agitated and said in rage, Su Zimo, you don't have to humiliate me like this even if you don't want to give it to me. Did I humiliate you? Su Zimo did not understand why Shenmengqi was so agitated all of a sudden. She questioned, You'd rather give the spot to a spirit beast than me. Isn't that humiliating me? Fu. He shook his head and scoffed coldly. Night Spirit saved my life. Why can't I give it to it? Furthermore, why should I give it to you? Shenmengqi opened her mouth as though she wanted to say something. However, nothing came out and she merely stood rooted to the ground in a daze, looking pale as a sheet. Su Zimo had already swept his robes and left. Chapter 336, Inheriting the Secret Skills. Chapter 336, Inheriting the Secret Skills. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Even though there had been some commotion, Ethereal Peak was the biggest winner of this sect competition. In the small courtyard beside Jishui River, everyone from Ethereal Peak along with Nianqi and Xiaoning had a hearty celebration. However, everyone had their own troubles. Late at night, everyone had dispersed. Under the hazy and cold moonlight, a green-robed cultivator sat by the side of Jishui River alone, staring at the glistening water surface in a daze. Beside him was a pitch-black and majestic beast sprawled on the ground. After growing up, Night Spirit was stalwart and its limbs were extremely strong. Every single muscle it had possessed explosive strength, while its claws that were hidden in the gaps of its fingers were unusually sharp. Its head resembled a wolf, and it had a shocking bite strength. This was a perfect body that was born to kill. Right then, a series of footsteps appeared behind him. Zimo. Xianyi's voice rang out. Su Zimo was about to stand up when Xianyi pressed against his shoulder and sat down. I'm planning to impart the other 2 secret skills of Ethereal Peak to you tomorrow. I hope that you'll be able to master them before entering the ancient battlefield. I don't think that's appropriate. Su Zimo frowned. Ethereal Peak's 3 secret skills were no trifle matter. Without the permission of the sect master, anyone who imparted them privately would be going against the sect rules. It's all right, Xianyi replied. I've already relayed a message about the sect competition. I'm sure the sect will hear of it before long, and they'll agree with my decision. Pausing for a moment, Xianyi continued, furthermore, This is an unfulfilled wish of Wenxian. I'm fulfilling it on his behalf. Su Zimo nodded and did not decline further. It was clear that the remaining 2 secret skills, Ethereal Wings and Ethereal Sword, would provide significant boosts to his battle prowess. For the next 10 days, Su Zimo's time was almost spent entirely on cultivating the 2 secret skills. Due to the short period of time, level 1 of Ethereal Sword, Shadows, was not cultivated successfully yet. However, Su Zimo comprehended Ethereal Wings swiftly and was able to use it with ease. With Ethereal Wings, it meant that Su Zimo would be able to soar through the skies like golden cores without depending on external objects. Furthermore, it would provide a boost to his agility and mobility in the air. From a secret skill perspective alone, Ethereal Wings was much more functional than the other 2 skills. Not only could it be used as a life-saving technique, it was multifarious and its agility could be used offensively as well. Even for golden cores, Ethereal Wings was still extremely useful. The ancient battlefield did not merely contain elixirs and spirit weapons. There were also all sorts of secret skills and inheritance of powerful sections. It was said that Ethereal Wings was obtained by a disciple of the sect who had entered the ancient battlefield in the past. On this day, the palace sent men to gather everyone from the 4 ranking lists in preparation to enter the ancient battlefield. Before leaving, Xianyi instructed, "Keep your sect badges and be as low-key and cautious as possible within the ancient battlefield. Don't be reckless. All of you are in possession of supreme-grade flying swords, so don't reveal them until it's a life-or-death fight. There are far too many factions stronger than the Great Zhou dynasty in Tianhuang mainland. Even in the Tianhuang North region, the Great Zhou dynasty's strength is considered to be inferior. Above it, there are super sects, and above that, there are the legendary immortal sects." The mention of that had Su Zimo's heart skipping a beat. He had heard Demoness Ji mention about the 9 different factions of Tianhuang mainland before. Those 9 factions did not refer to 9 different sects. The various factions added up to dozens of sects. For example, the immortal sects had 9 major sections. There were 7 Fiend sects, and the Pure Maiden sect which Demoness Ji was in was merely one of them. In that sense, the Great Zhou dynasty was truly nothing when compared to those factions and sects, let alone Ethereal Peak. "Zimo, especially you," Xianyi reminded, "you have so many supreme grades and even a perfect spirit weapon in your possession. While no one might harbor designs on you in the capital, you have to be extremely careful once you enter the ancient battlefield. Even comrades who enter the ancient battlefield with you cannot be trusted," Lu Hui added. Su Zimo nodded. A perfect spirit weapon was enough to trigger a bloody battle between golden cores. It was easy to imagine what would happen if news of him possessing a perfect spirit weapon was leaked out in the ancient battlefield. "Go on." Xianyi waved his hand. "In that 1 year, it'll be good if you guys have the chance to find a passage to leave the Great Zhou dynasty and the Tianhuang North region." When they heard that, Su Zimo and the rest were shocked. Even though he did not state it explicitly, Xianyi's meaning was very clear. Su Zimo and the rest left Mo's spirit weapon workshop and arrived deep in the palace with the lead of a city guard. Inside, a huge and majestic palace hall was erected. They entered and saw that the other cultivators of the ranking lists were already present. Apart from the 40 of them, there were 10 other people, and Ji Yaoxue was among them. When Ji Yaoxue saw Su Zimo and the rest enter, she smiled and nodded at him. Given the strength of the Great Zhou dynasty, they could send 50 people into the ancient battlefield with each teleportation. Apart from the 40 people of the 4 ranking lists, the Great Zhou dynasty would also select 10 other cultivators to enter the ancient battlefield. Other than Ji Yaoxue, the other 9 must have been carefully selected and were extremely strong. Their duty was to protect the 3rd princess. In the center of the hall, there was an ancient stone array formation. The long and massive rocks chosen for the formation were about half the height of a person, and there were mysterious array patterns etched on them. Complicated and incomprehensible, they illuminated with light. 5 stone pillars stood around the stone formation. There was a cultivator seated at the top of each stone pillar. Their auras were restrained, and they had steady bearings. Although their cultivation realms could not be read, they were probably at least nascent souls, or even void reversions. Everyone. At that moment, the Emperor surveyed everyone and said slowly, "The ancient battlefield is not a friendly place. In it, there are some living beings from the ancient era, and some of them are even more violent than ancient remnant beasts and pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Every step in the ancient battlefield is filled with killing intent and danger. However, great opportunities await alongside the dangers. Some become famous throughout the world after returning from the ancient battlefield. Some raise their sects and family clans to prominence after returning. Of course, many more die without ever getting the chance to return. This is a test. If you can survive the year, you will be reborn and truly establish your foundation, ensuring your core formation. If you die, be it whether you're a genius or monster, you'll be forgotten by everyone." When he heard that, Su Zimo felt a sense of D and Ekyut, J and a grave, VU. Back then, Dayu said the same thing that night she threw him to Tsonglang mountain range alone. That was the truth as well. Under the baptism of blood and life and death experiences, Su Zimo had built an indestructible foundation for his cultivation path that year. Chapter 337, Ancient Battlefield. Chapter 337, Ancient Battlefield. Of course, in the ancient battlefield, other than the threat of the many ancient living beings, there's also the threat of cultivators from other factions and sects. There are many sects in Tianhuang mainland and countless experts. There's even the 9 factions that reign over Tianhuang mainland. The might of the great Zhou dynasty allows us to send 50 people into the ancient battlefield. However, some super sects or mighty dynasties can send up to thousands of people inside. Even though they were mentally prepared, most of the cultivators of the ranking lists still revealed shock when they heard that. The implication of that was that if the 50 of them were to get into a conflict with those factions in the ancient battlefield, there was a high chance that they would get annihilated by the other party. Cruel beyond anything else, there were no rules or boundaries within the ancient battlefield. Any disagreement or treasure could lead to a massive massacre. If a Meridian unlocking elixir was discovered, a bloody battle would definitely erupt. For Foundation establishment cultivators, the Meridian unlocking elixir was extremely rare and had long been lost in Tianhuang mainland. There were a total of 8 spirit meridians for cultivators, and unlocking them was one tougher than the other. By the time one was at their 7th or 8th meridian, it would be almost impossible to unlock them unless they had external help. However, one's chances would be improved greatly upon consuming a meridian unlocking elixir. The better the quality and grade of the meridian unlocking elixir, the greater the chances of unlocking. Of course, true treasures, elixirs, secret skills, and even Connate spirit weapons might only exist deep in the ancient battlefield. It's the most dangerous there, and you will not only find legacy disciples of powerful sects, but also pure-blooded ferocious beasts. The ancient living beings deep in the ancient battlefield are also the strongest and most terrifying. Do not venture deep into the ancient battlefield under any circumstances. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This meant that they would be safer as long as they did not venture deep into the ancient battlefield. Of course, that was only in a relative sense. The living beings in the ancient battlefield were normally asleep. However, once the ancient battlefield opens up, many of those ancient living beings would also awaken. For them, the cultivators that entered from the various parts of Tianhuang mainland were nothing but rare delicacies, and a massacre was bound to break out. There were 9 cultivators standing behind Ji Yaoxue, and the Emperor pointed to one of them. This is Jiangyu, a 6th Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and the commander for your expedition. 10 years ago, he entered the ancient battlefield and returned alive. Be it in terms of experience or strength, he's stronger than all of you. Just listen to his instructions. Any questions? The Emperor looked around and asked. Someone asked, how was the ancient battlefield formed? The Emperor replied slowly. It's said that the ancient battlefield is a destroyed world left behind after a massive battle in the ancient era. Within it, countless sects, experts, ferocious beasts, and fiend celestials are buried. In fact, there might even be the inheritance of those sects and experts in the depths of the ancient battlefield. Everyone was shocked. A massive battle that could shatter an entire world. One could only imagine how terrifying that battle was. After pondering for a while, the emperor reminded, the Tianhuang North region has 4 dynasties, Great Zhou, Great Xia, Great Shang, and Great Yu, and they exist like fire and water. After entering the ancient battlefield, the most important thing is to watch out for them. As for everyone else, adapt to the situation. I hope to see all 50 of you return. With that said, the emperor bowed to the 5 cultivators on top of the 5 stone pillars and said in a deep voice, Elders, please open up the passage. Upon seeing that, everyone realized that the cultivation realm of the 5 cultivators should be above the emperor. It was very likely that they were already at Void Reversion Realm, 5 Void Reversion Dao beings. That was the foundation of the Great Zhou dynasty. Swoosh! An invisible ripple spread out between the eyebrows of the 5 cultivators. It was extremely terrifying, as if it contained an unrivaled heavenly might. A feeling surfaced from the depths of Su Zimo's heart. He might be disintegrated if he was touched by that energy ripple. The moment that thought surfaced, Su Zimo's right hand started to heat up without any warning. It returned to normal in the blink of an eye. He frowned and glanced at his right hand. It was almost certain that Dai Yu had left him something inside that blood bone of his right hand. However, as to what the blood bone was or the purpose it served, Su Zimo had no clue at all. Furthermore, he had a feeling that he was not qualified to utilize the core of the blood bone or unleash its true purpose and effects given his current cultivation realm. Every single pattern on the long-shaped rocks emitted mysterious glows that intensified, turning stronger and clearer until they converged and eventually erupted. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Rays of divine light lit up around the stone formation, creating a light barrier that illuminated the entire palace hall. Everyone, enter the formation swiftly. A cultivator on the stone pillar shouted. Su Zimo and the rest of the cultivators did not hesitate. Their figures flickered as they crossed the light barrier one after another. Break! The 5 cultivators hollered at the same time, and there was a sparkle on their foreheads. The light around the stone formation immediately rose and shone brightly, forming a bedazzling pillar of light that shot into the heavens. It seemed to pierce through the voids, revealing a pitch-black tunnel that was sinister and cold. A completely different aura, one that was old and ancient, permeated through the tunnel. You have to reach the landing spot a year from now to return to Great Zhou. As soon as he said that, everyone within the stone formation felt a ripping sensation from their bodies. It was a little pain, as if an invisible force was tugging them from the spot, as they left their original spot. The light pillar in the stone formation gradually dissipated and Su Zimo and the rest had disappeared. Ancient battlefield. Even though it was just a broken world, it was vast and much larger than the Great Zhou dynasty's territory. It was a place where opportunities and danger coexisted. In a desolate land of sand, a distortion appeared in space and figures fell from within one after another. It was Su Zimo's group. Many Foundation establishment cultivators were not used to such spatial teleportations. While the entire process was brief, it was extremely painful. Their bodies felt like they were being ripped apart and their souls were being drawn from the depths of their minds. Feeling dizzy, many cultivators collapsed to the ground as soon as they came out. They could not even stand properly, looking pale and pathetic. Only a few among them could maintain their composure. Apart from the 6th Meridian Foundation establishment commander, Jiang Yu, who had been to the ancient battlefield before, Su Zimo and Night Spirit were the only ones with terrifying physiques. Jiang Yu turned his head slightly and gazed deeply at Su Zimo without saying anything. Heavens, what rich spirit qi! Is this the ancient battlefield? The spirit qi in the ancient battlefield is extremely rich. It's worlds apart from out there. Many cultivators gradually adapted and regained their senses, exclaiming in surprise. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and the surrounding spirit chi entered through his ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and pores and coursed through his body. It was pure and rich, condensing into drops of spirit liquid the moment it entered his dantian. The spirit liquid formed a river in his meridians, gushing and roaring as his fourth meridian vaguely appeared. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.